Eddie Van Halen here, telling you, keep playing, man. Gotta keep playing. It's the only thing there is. Music, man. Keep playing. All right? I'm gonna come looking for you if you don't.
What is up? What is up? Here we are once again on a Tuesday night, 9:03 p.m., and we are ready to go. It is August 13th, 2024, and this is what, the third edition of the Guitar Arsenal. Should I start putting numbers on these and count
Probably.
them?
And date them and all that stuff.
Yeah,
might as well.
Whatever. They're here, and then they're here forever.
Well, for keeping informed, there'll be some sort of technical difficulty tonight.
Right. Yep. Jimmy's house is going to explode or something. I don't know.
That's not something to really joke about with Jimmy.
Hey, what, when people say, because I leave my windows open, or my curtains up, and it was like, why do you leave your curtains up with all that? You can see right in and see all those guitars, and it's like, what? Okay, so somebody comes and steals them. Everything is fully insured, so don't threaten me with having to buy more guitars.
Well, welcome in, boys.
Oh, no.
We've got John DeShane, we've got Symmetry Trev, we got Jimmy Biter, we got Randy, we've got myself, OU812 Ryan. So welcome in, everybody. First and foremost, I want to give a big shout out and a thank you to our channel members. We do have channel membership available on the channel. If you should choose to help support the channel in that manner, we certainly appreciate it, and we want to thank each and every one of these channel members that are here. Thank you so much for your support. All of our channel members, old and new, it certainly helps us to keep on keeping on with what we're doing. And our newest members there, Way Up Dude, AMC Kingdom, and Josh Chanberg. You guys rock. As well as all of the channel members. We appreciate it. Shall we get over to the chat and see who's here?
Sure.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's
do her.
Let me get her opened up here. Let's see. There we go. It's open here. All right, first.
Reminds me of opening up my my hunting.
Don't say it.
Rifle. No, my hunting rifle zipper that had that sound every time.
Well, I mean, my thought was it's kind of like a gig bag, being opened up.
Same thing.
Yeah, same thing. So, first in I see is channel member Electric Gypsy Blues, here early, but at least I'm here right on. Appreciate you jumping in. Zach Thong is here. Good to see you, sir.
Exactly.
Channel member Rob Blackmore Official's hanging out with us. Right on. Channel member Steven Franklin is here saying hello all. Good to see you, Steven. Let's see. Channel member Alonzo Guardia is here. What's up,
dude?
Alonzo? Good to see you. Channel member Jimmy Biter in the chat and on the panel tonight. Appreciate you jumping in with us, Jimmy.
Thanks for having me.
Let's see. We've got channel member Hillary is here as well. Good to see you hanging out. We've got a new face, Steve V. Hey, all. New to this channel. Have been enjoying your jam sessions. Right on. Welcome in.
Awesome, man.
Cool.
Welcome.
So, new to the channel, what we do is Tuesday nights, we do the Guitar Arsenal. We're going to do some gear talk and just kind of go over a piece of gear that one of us has, new stuff, old stuff, any of the stuff, kind of go over specs and talk about it and just kind of hang out and have fun. Thursday nights, Trans-trem Thursday. Got a couple guitars back there with a Trans-trem on it, and we'll play couple of them. Play some Trans-trem riffs, and kind of hang out and jam and have a good time. And then Sunday is the community jam. So anybody in the community that would like to jump on, I think Jimmy is the only one recently that's been brave enough to come on here and do it. So. We need some fresh blood. So everybody
Jimmy's
figure out how to
damn near a full-fledged member of this crew. So
yeah.
That's almost been a year. I can't believe it's been that long already.
Has it really been that long? Wow.
Yeah,
Right.
I think I'm going on 11 months already.
Wow. Well, we're glad to have you, man.
yeah,
Sweet.
But
I'm glad to be here.
anybody in the channel or the community that wants to get on and show off some of your licks and riffs, Sunday will be the time to do that for the Sunday Community Jam. So welcome in, Steve V. Hope you enjoy your stay.
Yeah,
and let's see who else we have with us tonight. There's Symmetry hanging out in the chat and on the panel. There's Papa Blue. Good to see you. Channel member Bass, Clef, Connoisseur is here. Channel member Blue Mox is with us. Good to see you, Blue. There's Stan Mucha is here saying, hey guys, welcome in. Let's see. Ken, Hit Metalworks, channel member is here. Good to see you, sir.
Yep.
Wall of Cries, hanging out from the Randy room there.
In the
Let's
toilet.
see. Who else? Looky here. We got Kurt 5150 is hanging out. Is that Jimmy Biter unzipping those shorts? Could
Yep.
be. Could be.
That's Kurt's unzipping Jimmy's shorts.
No, that's just sick and wrong.
You notice it's from side to side too. That's a big old window.
You know, as long as you don't, have something like,
Ow.
who else we got? Channel member Hillary is here. Good to see you.
Hillary?
Lawnmower Tapes is hanging out. Good to see you. Florida Claimers Ted is here. Good to see you hanging out.
Dead.
There's Yostinator. What is up?
What's up,
Good
man?
to see you hanging with us.
Hey.
Let's see. Channel member Martian Murray is here saying howdy to all. Welcome in, Martian Murray. Channel member Way Up Dude is here. And I think that's it for now. We've got 38 here.
Alonzo, yeah.
Yeah, we got Alonzo. Let's see. He does say, though, speaking of new amp, ordered my EVH Stealth 50 watt and it comes this Thursday. Can't wait to play it. Right on, man.
That's
Very
awesome.
cool.
Sweet, dude.
Very cool. Let's see.
Imagine
Kurt
ordering
says,
an amp on Thursday and getting it the following Thursday.
right? Instead of 3 months ago and getting it 3 months later. Kurt just got an ad. Is this Santa Cruz TV? You know what? It could be. This is one time that we don't do any jamming, and we don't get any super chats or anything. So figure we could watch a couple ads and make a couple cents. Help to support the channel. So
Pro tip: for $12 Canadian a month, you can have premium, and you don't see ads ever.
I've got premium, so yeah.
First time I saw that, I'm like, yes, please.
right.
Never looked back. Not
Yeah.
even for a
Now
second.
everybody's
Yep.
gonna be, I got an ad too.
Look, at least we're not claiming we wrote Van Halen tunes before Van Halen
This is
did.
true. This is true. So
I can't stop loving you, brother.
yep. The Tuesday shows will be monetized, so there will be some ads that come through, and just have to deal with it. Let's see. Channel member Ed has just kicked the door down. He's here. Welcome in, Ed. Good to
What's
see
up,
you.
Edward?
That's
How the
right.
hell do they do,
Dollar, make me holla.
How do they do ads on a live stream?
They just roll them in.
So they miss portions of the show because
They just like, yep, F you. Here's an ad. So
Yep. Thank you, Susan Wojcicki.
Do they miss
Absolutely.
part of the show, or does it knock them back 30 seconds
they'll
in the
miss it.
stream?
You missed the show.
does
Yeah,
it?
'cause
I don't know. I was thinking that it like paused it and then picked up where the
Don't
ad
think
was. So, I mean, we're not saying anything interesting at the moment. So, no. Kurt knows the
back
guy that wrote that riff. Hey, Randy.
yeah, his name's Desmond Child,
Well, I have somebody.
which was promptly stolen by somebody else who claimed to have written that riff years before Edward
Right.
wrote that riff, which he probably wrote in 1978.
Right.
Probably. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Sable's music video has just come on in. Welcome. And we got channel member L Bar J right behind. Welcome in.
What's up,
Good
Lee?
to see you. All right. Let's see. There are ads on everything, man. There's OTW Live is here. Welcome in. Got everybody kind of rolling in a few minutes late. That's good. That's all right. Cheech is here. He says, hey, Jimmy, didn't Susan, whatever, just pass away this last week?
Yep.
Wojcicki?
Wojcicki.
Who's that?
She was the CEO of was it Google or YouTube?
Yeah.
And she just passed away from battle with cancer, which
Oh, wow.
I mean, which is sad, but she did some awful things with YouTube.
Did she? Still.
Rob Blackmore says, I'm related to the guy that wrote Smoke on the Water, if that matters. just saying.
I prefer his Luke
Uncle's
music.
nephew's farmer's roommate.
My. Let's see. Can't Drive 55 just found his way here. Welcome in.
Hey,
Randy, best guitarist on this stream. That's right.
He is. He is.
Absolutely.
It's not true.
Well, actually,
even with a bum thumb.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see about that. Nobody on here is best. Everybody does different stuff.
It's a diversity, you know. It's different flavors, different tastes.
We're all mediocre at best.
Yes,
Right.
For sure.
I am the best guitarist in this chair.
That's right.
Mark's Gas Station is here. Welcome in.
Hey.
Now he says John's best guitarist on the stream. Oh, there.
Because he doesn't want to pay up for his debt.
He's catching all of us. So there we go. Trev, best guitarist on the stream. Right on. Appreciate you, Kurt. You're making us all feel good.
Kurt, you my bro.
Yeah.
What's the specs on your new PC? I just finished my first ever do-it-yourself build. Just real quick. Asus Z790. What do they call that? Yeah, but what's the actual name of it? Maximus Hero Dark or something like that. Intel 14900K, 6000 megahertz memory, GeForce 480 Super, and 4 terabyte Samsung. What do you call those? SSD drive.
NVMe.
Yep. And that's pretty much it. Let's see.
So
Anybody
what's
else new jumping in here?
If we're doing
You're
this.
good. You're good.
What's your, what do you plug your cards into now? What are those ports? It's been so long since I built a
PCI
computer.
Express. No. But
Isn't
it's
it
like
8?
4th gen now, or is it 5th?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's a Gen 5, I think, on these. Yep.
I was building them. It was just old PCI.
So the video card, supposedly that slot is like a 16x speed on that one.
Right.
And then the one below it is like an 8x. And then it's got another little PCI Express slot, a little
stubbies.
small one. Yeah. And that's where the camera card goes in, where I plug in my 4 cameras. So all
So
good.
did it ever come to fruition where you could have like 2 GPUs in there?
Sure. Yeah, you could. I mean, they don't really support the SLI or anything like that anymore.
It's
I mean,
kind of
so,
gone the way of the Dodo bird.
so,
I had
yeah,
a Crossfire rig for a while too.
yeah, you couldn't use them together. So
Dory.
anymore anyway. What was build cost? Well, you just have to look up the parts to see. Dan Gorman is here. Nah, you're not late. We're just kind of shooting the,
You know
Let's
what's
see.
hilarious about Blue Mox?
Rock Daddy's here. Welcome in, Rock. What's hilarious about Blue?
He's one of those guys that will ask. Like I remember when I got my, so what did that cost you? I
Yeah.
got my Pete Thorne.
Yeah.
When I got the this one here. So what would that run you? About 10 grand?
Yep. Look him up. Look him up. Did we say hey to channel member Dory? Says, hi guys. Hope you're all having a good day. Yeah, we are.
Dory?
We're hanging out. Yostinator did an MSI Z790 Carbon Max Wi-Fi 2 Intel 14700 Asus TUF GeForce 470 Ti Super and the Samsung 980 Pro 2 terabytes. Right on, man.
Here,
That should be really zippy. Bonkers is here. Welcome in.
Right on.
It says Mitch Heyman's new PC has at least a dozen USB ports, and he's had at
USB-C?
least 3 or 4 crashes so far. So USB-C was one of the things that I was looking for, and this board has 2 Thunderbolt ports, another USB-C underneath it, and then a USB-C on the front as well at 10 gig. So it is set and ready to roll. Let's
What's the heat
see.
management like so far? Good? Yeah.
Yeah, it seems to be fine. I mean, it's a big case, and I got a lot of fans in there, so it should be good. Fruitcake Tony just found his way in. Welcome in, sir.
Joni.
We also got Karina Thomas, a.k.a. Triple Hot Mess, is here, saying hello. Good to see you.
Cool.
And as everyone is filing in, we'll continue to get you. But let's get started with the show. We've got a treat. John has acquired, anybody that was here on Sunday's show saw that he has acquired a, John, up to you.
A Suhr SL68 Mark II. So what that means in regular terms is a 1968 Marshall Plexi with all defeatable Ed mods in it, Eddie Van Halen mods. So it's basically a clone of his Super Lead, but it's a 12 series Plexi, which is, I guess, the OG. and they added the fat, the bright, and the switchable bright, or the fat, the bright, and the mid boost, which are all switchable and defeatable.
Now,
it's 100-watt Plexi.
we all know that before you had the Friedman BE100 Deluxe.
Wonderful amp, yeah.
So what really kind of sparked your desire to get rid of that and then get that amp?
Well, with the BE, well, I guess we got time, so I can actually talk. I've always been a Marshall guy, like for my playing career for the most part. 800, an SD or a Super Overdrive, the yellow one in front. I always liked that tone. And the idea with going to the Friedman was kind of like the best of all worlds, right? You can have the Jose modded tones. You can have like over the top saturation.
What's up, Bo?
Hey, Bo.
Channel member Guitar Man 45 is here.
And the Plexi tone. And that's primarily what I ended up using all the time was the Plexi channel as dialed into a Plexi thing as you could get it. I really didn't use the other channels. It's just my tastes, right? They've evolved. And there's something about the preamp gain, which is the 12 AX7s, and getting a lot of your gain from that as opposed to the power tubes. And of course, well, why didn't you just get that in the first? Because I didn't know, right?
Right.
It's evolution as you're, kind of getting deeper down the craze path. So this is ultimately what I should have had way back in the very beginning, something like this, right?
Right.
But of course, it's got a variac built into it, just like Ed. So it goes from 100 watts down to about 90, 70 watts. And it's got a post-phase inverter master, which means that you can turn it down so it's not blowing your head off, and it's still cooking the power section.
Nice.
That stringy kind of thing going on.
What's up, Dwight? The Hitman Bailey is here. Welcome in, Dwight. Good to see you, sir. And there's 40 Grit. I said that's a badass amp. John, congrats. John was in the Magic Marshall, and he knows it well. Right on.
40 Grit.
So apparently, John Suhr had worked on and serviced Ed's amp.
Correct.
I heard 40 Grit mention that on his channel or somewhere recently. So I guess he would know all about it. Now, the Suhr amp is still a hand-wired, made-to-order amp, as opposed to like the Friedman comes off the line with PCB boards and so forth. Here, I've got this
You have a
here.
shot of it?
I don't have that just yet.
Okay, yeah, I've got one.
But I've got this information here.
Oh, so you've got from the, okay.
Yep. So this is kind of the layout. So you've got just the standby switch all the way over on the left, indicator, presence bass, middle treble with a fat, and what is that, a BST? What does that mean, BST?
That's your mid boost.
Okay.
So
then
that's where Eddie's pot, the mid, like a standard 1968 Plexi had a 25K mid boost. Ed's for some reason had a 50K, so that's what that does. It switches over to a 50K.
Ed's amp had a 50K mid pot.
That's what it does, though. It changes the value. Sorry if I'm boost is maybe the wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it actually puts a pot in the circuit that then makes it 50K, basically.
It does something to make it 50K.
Right.
Or some type of resistor or something on it, I'm sure.
Exactly. And then the bright switch on the right there is straight off, which is OG Plexi. There's no bright cap. It's just on the second one is 100 picofarad, which is a little bit brighter, which is JTM 45s had that in it. And the far right is 4700 picofarad, which is what they put in those early Marshalls. And that's why everybody thinks they're super gainy. It's just brightness, really.
Right. Gotcha. So are all those little mini toggles, are those all 3 position or just the bright?
Just the bright.
Okay.
Yeah,
So the
they're
other
on or
ones
off.
are on or off, and then you've got selection on the bright. Okay.
Yeah,
So volume 1, volume 2, just like a Marshall.
Yep.
And then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 inputs there.
So you can jumper it just like the regular
Okay.
old Marshalls, right?
So it's not internally jumpered or anything like that.
No, and there's some logic behind that because so I run it in the bright position, high gain or high, whatever, the top left one there.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're doing that, basically only volume 1 is effective. However, if you turn up volume 2, it actually will do a little tone shaping.
Right. Add a
That's
little
why
bass
it's
to
not,
it.
Yeah, that's why it's not jumpered internally.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you want the full deal, you just put one in the low sensitivity and the high sensitivity of the second channel.
Right.
And then you can blend them, which I have yet to try yet.
So Bo is asking, is that the 100 watt, John?
Of course it is, Bo. You could know me better than that.
Can't Drive 55 says John is going to start playing Unchained every Thursday.
No, I'll send, it's probably cheaper for me to get Randy to come up here and play it. Or can sit on my couch.
Right.
I don't know about all that.
Cheech is asking, did Ed get a Jose mod?
He has one. Jose did build an amp for him, but his original Marshall, no.
No.
Yeah. And now he worked on that Marshall, I'm sure.
Yep. But there's no, the only mods in Ed's amp were the 50K pot.
And that was
In it.
speculated to have been done at the Marshall factory by
Right.
mistake.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say mistake. They just had whatever kind of pots
Right.
laying around, and they were
What they
like,
had on hand,
okay,
yeah.
that one goes in this one, and that's why you got variances between different Marshall heads.
Yeah. Exactly.
Let's see.
But-
Channel member Six Fingered Assault is here. Who guessed the amp correctly? I was off by a year. Blue says, great looking amp. Congrats on the purchase and receiving it.
Thanks, brother.
The
Appreciate it.
receiving it was the hard part.
Well, you know what? Like I had to wait. Probably 4 or 5 months for my BE. So
Yeah. Bo wants to know if you have talked this over with Dave Friedman yet.
in fact, I have. When I was originally looking for Plexi, well, what stimulated it really was Dave's Plex amp, the 50 watt coming out, and there was a clip of Rappaport playing at NAMM or something like that. I'm like, oh, there it is.
Right.
So that's well, I got a couple of pedals here. I've been trying to change my BE into a Plexi for quite a while. So I started investigating it, and it was a 50 watt. So right away, there's a problem.
Right.
I can't. I've had 50 watts over the years, and it's just a non-starter for me. They just don't sound as full and rich and headroomy enough. So I emailed Dave, and I said, Dave, is there going to be a 100 watt version? He says, well, I might do some one-offs or whatever it is.
Very limited run or something like that.
I'm not signing on to that train.
Yeah, you're ready to go now. Simon Hosford is here. He says, talking about the new Suhr. Awesome. Welcome in, Simon. Good to see you, sir.
You're welcome to jump on Haas if you want. He has one too. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Right on.
Yeah. I think he has the original one, but that's what has it debuted yet? His thing?
Yes. Yes. it
Yeah.
did.
So that's one of these.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. If you got some insight and you want to jump on and talk about it, for sure. There's an email in the description of the video. Just send me an email and I get you a link. Quentin James is here. You guys hear about my expression pedal not having a toe switch? Oh, geez. I couldn't watch that. I was like, Quentin, stop squishing the thing. You're going to break it. Exactly.
So anyways, back to Dave. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say 40 Grits comment. He said, yeah, the mods were not the norm, but not out of the ordinary.
Yep.
And let's see. Bo says the Suhr sounds like it sounds better than my 72 Plexis. I'll have to check it out, John. He's got me freaking interested in one of these things. So
There's a
Simon
couple of
says,
pros
I
and cons to
do.
that.
I have the first one. Sure, I'll check out the link.
Cool.
So you got to look in the description, Haas, and send a quick email to Ryan, and he'll send you a link. Otherwise, all these yahoos would be on the panel if we just pinned it. Just joking, guys. So anyways, back to Dave.
Yep.
So I did my nerdy thing, and I went all over the internet and looked at what people were saying about the Plex. And I've always known about the SL, but I always thought Suhr was, guitars. That's what they do. And through a bunch of research, it was there was a couple of things about the Plex that just kind of wasn't up my alley, right?
Right.
The way it was assembled and the parts and
Yeah.
all these sorts of things, right? So I dug into because the only alternative, well, there's a bunch of alternatives. There's Seriatone, there's Metroplex, all these guys, right? But I'm one of those guys that wants to be able to, if it blew up tomorrow, it would be sent back and fixed and sent back to me within a week. No charge type of thing, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I expect. And with these other companies, I don't have that trust. So yeah, it was a downward spiral, but it happened very quickly. It was like, okay, this is the one.
Yep. Let's see. Elbar J is asking, what kind of pickups does the amp seem to have the best tones? Humbucker, single coil, hot?
I don't use hot pickups, but the single coils and the humbuckers, to me, they sound great, right?
What's up, Mitch? Mitch Heyman in the house?
So this will be single.
Yo, Mitch.
Yeah. Give us a little taste.
It cleans up great.
That chime, yeah, that's great.
So who needs multi-channel amp? To me, right?
Right. And that was just dry amp right there. There was nothing added in
No
there.
goop. No.
Nothing at all. Yep, sounds great.
There's nothing at all.
And you can hear,
And that's pretty much everything set at 5 plus or minus 1.
yeah, you can hear the dynamic of that thing even through YouTube compression and everything. Like you're talking about that 100-watt iron, you can really hear that coming through.
Yep. Which kind of leads to some of the kind of had to have some balls to buy an amp like this, I think, because
There's no hiding.
there's zero hiding.
Yeah.
Like there's very, very little compression, and it's a bugger to play. But when you get it right, it sounds. There's no other sound like it.
Yeah. Stan says that the EVH amp also has a 330 microfarad on the V2. I'm sure the SL68 has it as well. I wouldn't know.
330. I don't even know what that is, to be honest with you.
Capacitor, microfarad capacitor, I guess.
330. That's an odd value, though.
Steve Brand is here. Welcome in, Steve. Steve V is asking, are you mic'd up or running through RL with IRs?
Mic'd up, 3 mics, 3 cabs, going into the Rodecaster, and effects are in parallel.
Can't Drive says the amp sounds great, and John, I like it. John says Guitar Man 45. Right on.
brother.
Cool. So let's look at some of the other stuff here that it says. It's a single channel with expanded tonal range. So 4 inputs with the addition of 3 switches and the all new transparent master volume circuit. The new SL68 series delivers the complete range of tones possible from a classic British style amp at any volume. So that's my curiosity. How does the master volume sound on it to you?
Better than the BE, way better. So
Yeah.
there's 2 things that happen: the cab dynamics, right, where you get that you hit a thing and you can feel it in your short curlies.
You get that knock. Yeah.
That's right. But other than that, it's like I could play this at this volume that you're hearing right now. It's not loud at all in here, and it's fine. It's great. I mean,
Where's
you get it
your master set on right now?
up. The master on the back is about 1.5, 2.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, but the volume up front's 7.
Right.
And
Now,
it's-
have you found that you prefer that right there, or, what's the difference in cranking all everything up and then bringing it down with the
comes
master?
alive.
Okay.
Cab comes alive. Oh, you mean like doing the old slot
Yeah.
across the EQ?
Yeah.
It's awesome. It sounds like it's gonna just die.
Right.
But if you basically put everything on 10, bring the bass back to like 5, something
Right.
like that, because it'll take off some of that stuff. And it's Van Halen, man. It totally is. Like if I
Very
had
cool.
the right guitar, yeah, fuck. I don't know if I can do it now without banging out the levels, but I can try that if you guys want to.
Well, we're all interested in hearing some of the tones of it for sure.
Yeah.
But let's continue on seeing what it's got here. So, 4 inputs, 3 switches, which you just talked about already.
Yep.
So channel 1 input on the top, high sensitivity and voice brighter than channel 2. And then channel 2 input on the top, high sensitivity and offers a normal bassier tonal response. And channel 1 input bottom, lower sensitivity, offers a slightly warmer tone. And then the channel 2 bottom, low sensitivity and a normal bassier tonal response. So the whole purpose of jumpering those is to combine them. You can get a little
Yeah, exactly.
your brightness on channel 1 and your bassiness on channel 2 and blend it however you want, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Isn't that what most people do? They would jump it and turn volume 1 all the way up and then control how much thump from channel 2.
I would think so. It's very dynamic, right? The what you guys are hearing now is kind of what I like. That's my kind of go-to. What do they call it? Kitchen sink tone. Then go from clean all the way up, and then I can add a boost to it. But yeah, if you crank that thing all the way up, you can tighten it up with reducing the bass and put a pedal in it. It can chug and do all that stuff. But I mean, it's a 68 Plexi. It's not
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not a 5150. It's not a Soldano. It's not any of that.
It's your flavor for sure.
That's right.
Let's see what else that they have to say about it. Let's see. Fat cap, mid boost, and 3-way bright switches.
That'll
you
be,
talked about them a little bit. So
what's
the
it, fat cap, just have a look at that.
Yeah, it says one of the only tweaks found on a very famous amp John worked on in the 90s. Wonder whose amp that could have been.
Mick Mars's.
Yeah, there you go. Richard Fortus. The fat cap, adding low-end punch and bass that's perfect when using the treble channel. In the original SL series, the fat cap was always in the circuit, and this switch allows you to remove the fat cap to get closer to a true stock vintage amp. So if you want the well-known famous amp sound that we're all familiar with, then you would turn the fat cap on, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So the
Yeah,
mid
it's
boost,
weird because it can go. You know how Jimi Hendrix's tone was kind of very stringy and very almost buzzy and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
It'll do that in spades if you want it to.
Right.
But like it says there, it chops all of that, well, most of that stuff off, just tightens it up, right?
Mm-hmm.
It makes it go. But again, you have to, it's a relationship between how much juice you're putting through the power tube, so how high your volume is. Because if you put that stuff on and your volume is below 5, it'll tear your head off with how bright it is, right?
Right. Yeah.
But once you hit 5, 6, 7, it's just all of a sudden it goes, whoa. It just warms up. It's awesome.
Very cool. Let's see. Steve says, do you have a small box version, John?
They do. It's called the SL67.
There you go.
50
That's
watt.
the 50 watt. Yep.
Mm-hmm. For
Stan
people who
says
can't handle the 100.
the Plexi is the best amp, period, in my opinion. Love mine. Right on. Let's see. And we'll get it back over here. And the mid boost switch. We've got, wait a minute. Somebody's at the door. Let's get him on in here. We've got Simon Hosford, everybody. Welcome in, Simon.
What's up, Simon?
Oh yeah.
The one, the legend. Hey, brother.
Hey guys,
What's up, Hoss?
we're-
thank
good.
you, Ryan. How we doing? Hi, Randy, Jimmy, John. You legend. You have a very, very fun new toy.
I do.
So
Who
you were
cares
saying
about that?
that
We're waiting for the end of the month, aren't we, Simon?
Yeah,
Resolution of the Formula One
exactly
season.
right.
there we go. So
Yeah,
you were
yeah,
saying you got one of the first one of these amps, Simon.
Yeah. So John's got the MkII, which is, I think you guys were just spending the last 10 minutes discussing it. From what I heard, the extra little switches and things, which are killer. I've got the first version. The differences are, to my understanding, that the master volume, John's tweaked a little bit for the MkII. He says that it's more transparent, so that could only be a good thing, right? And there's the bright switches, which mine doesn't have. But I mean, to be honest, I use mine mainly to kind of dime it and do the eddy thing. But it does the Hendrixy sort of lower gain thing just fine as well. But they would be great additions, and obviously, if I had the option, why not? I would have that in there for sure.
Well, when you dime it too, it's lossy, right? So the bright caps
Yeah.
and all that shit doesn't make a difference at all. When it's on 10, it's just
That's
power
yeah.
from in and out. So the brights and
look,
all that doesn't matter.
that's a really good point. I think people sometimes forget that bright cap switches almost make no difference once you start really cranking the amp. It's that they really come into play if you're using it at lower gain kind of stuff, like cleaner, chimey plexi things. Then the bright switches are great. And then you've got that mid boost switch, don't you, John? Which I think you guys were just discussing, takes it from the regular kind of standard on paper 1968 mid pot value to the one that was in Eddie's 68, which I think is 500K instead of 250. Is that right? Is it, you guys know that?
25K
I think
to 50K.
it's something like that.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I've added a zero. 25K to 50K.
Ooh, that's fucking bright, man.
The site says that the mid boost switch dial in the perfect amount of mid range punch to cut through the mix. Mid boost gives a bit more gain to the phase inverter and a subtle lift to the tone stack, boosting the gain to the mid range. Most useful when diming the controls.
Exactly. And so what I've found that I needed to do to get Eddie sound that's a bit more, as I suppose that mid 80s kind of live without a net tone, it does need a little bit of a gain shove, just a little bit. I think it would be very interesting to hear that 50K mid pot, because that might boost the gain overall once it's dimed actually enough that you don't need anything in the front. So how I've achieved that is I just put like a Friedman Buxom boost in the front end, and I just give it a tiny, tiny bit of volume push, hardly anything really, and I boost the mids. interestingly, which is I guess what the mid pump value difference does. And I found that gets me pretty in the ballpark doing it that way. But having all of that switchable and inside the head, it makes the new version super, super versatile. So you're going to have hours of fun with that, John. That's for sure.
I actually have the wife shopping for a IKEA table that's just this high, so I can actually put the head here. So while we're doing this here, I can just tweak with it.
Tweak it on the go.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to get
Love it. And what was I going to say? So Jason Tong down here in Melbourne from Headfirst Amps, he's also got a original SL68, and of course, being an amp designer and builder, he's been inside it, and he says that thing is absolutely meticulously built, because me and him rave about all sorts of things all the time on the phone, and we were talking about that just a couple of weeks ago. We're talking about the MkII version, and he said that the mid pot thing is an easy mod that we might do to ours, but essentially he just says those things are built like tanks. He's really gave it the double thumbs up, which is great to have an amp builder and designer also that he's not associated with say, yeah, man, I've got one of these. This thing is built like a tank, and it's wired perfectly. It's the layout is such that it keeps all kind of RF interference and hum down to its absolute bare minimum, which is
unbelievably quiet for a preamp based amp, or no, a power amp.
Power, yeah.
It's
so
quieter
quiet.
than my BE100 was.
Really? Right. Yeah, that's real. So when you dime your SL68, it's quieter than when you've got a gainy setting on the BE100.
Yeah, the BE is a bit of a noisy affair, but I mean it's all relative. I'm sitting in my bloody studio here with 3 412s just off of me, so sitting on idle, it's it's that's what they do. But live, it would be no issue, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Live would be no issue at all. I mean, and if it was a real problem, just use a noise gate somewhere,
Yeah, for sure. Trev, do you have the link for Simon's latest Live Without a Net
I'll get it.
video? Post that in the chat if you don't mind.
Hey,
so
Trev.
that anybody that hasn't
How you
seen
doing,
that,
fella?
Doing well, thanks. How are you?
make sure
Doing
you go
very well.
over
Sorry,
and,
I didn't see you in here when I first jumped in.
I had to run out and pick up the kid real quick from the bus. She wasn't feeling well and left work early.
So when Trev posts the link, make sure you guys check that out after the show. But some of the best playing that I've heard of anybody trying to duplicate what Ed does. And I completely understand where you were coming from with wanting to do that. Because just like every time, like on a Thursday night, I'll play Summer Nights or whatever. That's almost like, that's my personal tribute, because we haven't gotten the tribute kind of show that we wanted to see. So that's kind of like my personal, this is my tribute to Ed. And I could feel that with what you were doing. That was super, super cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can speak for all of us in that. I mean, occasionally you get comments from people along the lines of, oh man, no one can play like Ed, and why don't you do your own thing and all of that. Well, the first thing to say about that is, of course, I mean, I spend most of my time being a songwriter in the studio, so I consider the songs that I write and co-write with people, that's kind of my own thing.
Right.
But as guitarists, I mean, like I said, I can speak for all of us that when you play Ed's music and his licks and stuff, it makes you feel inside the music, and it makes you feel kind of close to him in the same way that you would if you were standing 2 rows back from the front at the concert. It's something that happens very deep inside of us all. And I think that's why we all have so much fun deep diving and attempting to play his music. Of course, no one's ever going to play it exactly like Ed. We all understand that. And, but you're right, Ryan. It's so much fun, no matter what it is, whether it's the Live Without a Net thing that I tackled or any other stuff that we all do. It's fun, it's challenging, and it does sort of almost spiritually, it makes you feel kind of a little closer to Ed. And of course, he's not around anymore, so we can't go see him, you know?
Yep.
And that's how we all, well, certainly for me, that's how I get to re-experience his music. And I mean, you guys would probably know they hardly ever came to Australia, and they never came to Australia back in the heyday, you know.
Right.
The first time they ever came was with Gary Sharon singing on that tour. And, you know, I actually love Gary. I love what he does in Extreme. But to me, that was kind of a mismatch. And I just didn't, I mean, it obviously would not have been. So I saw that, but it was not like if I had have seen them playing with Sammy back in the mid 80s or with Roth before that. I mean, that would have just been incredible. And, you know, so for me, the more that I can kind of try and get inside his music, then that's my version of what I would have loved as a teenager and going to see them live, you know.
Yep.
So Simon, you did a show back in 2022, which was kind of a homage to all Van Halen.
I was just about to mention this, but go ahead, John.
Where in the hell can we get that?
Okay, so first, I know back at the time when I did that show, and yeah, so for anyone that doesn't know, after Ed passed, I thought what a great thing to do in Melbourne, at least, is get all the great session singers and rock singers that I've worked with over the years. And rather than make it like a tribute band doing a show, make it kind of more inclusive and make it like a party for everyone that was still kind of mourning the sudden passing of Ed, you know. And so we did that, and I had a camera crew in there, and we filmed it, and I multi-track recorded it. But unfortunately, there were issues with some of the multi-track lines. So my idea, of course, was to put it together for YouTube pretty quickly, and get it out there so everyone could have a look and sort of, you know, experience the fun night that we had, because it was such a fun night. So what we did was we did a reprise of the Van Halen 1 album. So that was our first set. And we bashed through all of that again, like we did at the Melbourne Guitar Show before Ed died. And then the second set was a cherry-picked free-for-all kind of, we did heaps of Sammy stuff, and we got up lots of different guest singers. And it was really cool, because then we got to just choose the songs that we really, really wanted to play, and it had nothing to do with trying to stick to an album or anything like that. The good news is that through taking the hard drive with all the files to some pretty tricky and tech-savvy people here in Melbourne, some of what I thought was lost forever is actually recoverable.
Nice.
But it's just because since COVID finished, obviously I've been busy back on the road again, touring with Australian artists and then in the studio songwriting. So I just haven't had the time since that to dig into it. But that's my very next thing, guys. So I'll salvage what I can from it and definitely put that up, because that was fun. It was at one of Melbourne's great rock venues. It's not a super big place, but I would say, I think its capacity is like 800 people, so that might give you an idea. But it's one of those classic rock clubs that still has the black walls, you know, and the black carpet, and it's got like the old school PA and the old school par light cans and stuff. So it was perfect, and we had a full house and of just people there that wanted to celebrate Eddie's life, you know. So it wasn't really, I didn't put it together as like my thing exactly, and a sort of come and look at me play Van Halen. It was more, I felt like someone had to do something in Melbourne to celebrate his life, and I'm sure like all of you guys, I still can't believe that Alex has been so quiet and that no one has done like a Taylor Hawkins style tribute to Ed.
Right.
You know? I mean, I think we're all super surprised by that, because if anyone in the rock universe deserved and just the most monstrous send off, it would be Ed, you know?
Yeah.
Damn right.
It's unfortunate how kind of dysfunctional that whole Van Halen thing was for years. I mean, so it's, you know, it's really not surprising that they couldn't get their act together to kind of do something proper for him.
It is, and I guess what is the great shame for me is that usually, even when people are totally not getting along and they're, it's dysfunctional and they're fighting, usually a death is where, like, even if you think about your own intimate family and
Mm-hmm.
relatives and stuff, it's a death that often brings people together for the first time, and you can bury some hatchets, but and even Ed's death doesn't seem to have been able to do that. And that's the thing that's surprising to me, that just for the sake of putting on a couple of concerts, you wouldn't even have to be a whole tour. You could do a concert on the East Coast, a concert on the West Coast, and then maybe one in the UK or something like what they did with Taylor.
Mhm.
And if everyone could just bury the hatchet for 3 shows, big deal,
Yeah. Yeah.
But they couldn't even do that. And
Well, I think
know-
that's why I say, like earlier, I kind of get that when I play the music, like we were talking about with you
Yeah.
doing the live without a net thing. So for me,
Yeah.
that's where I've kind of, come to grips with losing Ed is, just sharing my version of his music the best that I can. So, and I think that's all any of us are going to be able to do.
I agree. And I think that all of us around the world playing Eddie Van Halen's music and his licks and everything should be supported and encouraged. It's I mean, I know that definitely Ryan and everyone here, you've built such a great community of people where that is sort of nourished and encouraged, and there's no sort of weird judgment on it. But there's a lot of weird people on YouTube and stuff, isn't there, that are like,
Isn't
oh man,
there?
yeah, it's
You're
always
not playing
surprising.
that
It's
right.
always
And
surprising.
Ed
Yeah.
did this and Ed did that. Ed would want you to play it however the fuck you felt in that particular
Exactly.
moment, and then
Yeah.
never play it
Exactly.
again that way.
Yeah.
And there's a great comment that I'd like to make that I didn't even know years ago, but for all of us that love playing Ed's stuff on guitar, Ed self-confessedly in his early interviews, and some of them with Steve Rosen, he could regurgitate Clapton note for note in the same way that we all try and capture Ed note for note and have fun doing deep diving into that. That's what he did with Clapton, and apparently sometimes occasionally backstage at a concert when he was warming up, he would pull out his guitar and someone would be talking about Clapton to him, and he would just start playing it. And they said it sounded exactly like Eric Clapton. It didn't even, in that moment, it didn't even sound like Ed,
Right.
So he did it. All our heroes
Yeah.
did the same thing. So, I think that the fact that we're all doing it is wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, I've got a question for you as well. And some of those
Sure.
clips that I was seeing on your channel, I noticed that you're playing a Steinberger with Trans-trem on it.
Yes. So, and that was for that show in 2022 that we were just talking about, actually, because, because growing up with that Live Without a Net video, obviously the Trans-trem songs feature prominently, and I always thought that was such a cool thing. So when we started putting our laundry list together of all the songs we really wanted to do, I mean, there was no way I was going to not want to do Summer Nights or
Right.
Get Up or, whatever, right? Yeah. And so I don't actually own a guitar with a Trans-trem, and I'm definitely going to at some point because I borrowed one. So my guitar tech here in Melbourne, his kind of mentor, who used to be my mentor when I was a teenager, turns out that he still had a Steinberger with a Trans-trem. And so I borrowed it for the show and for the rehearsals, and it was so much fun to play. And obviously, all about that. And I can't believe that those things are not sort of more popular still, because that's an incredible invention and it's so much fun. They're awesome.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to give it back. I was like, no, I'm keeping this.
Yeah.
This is killer.
Yeah.
And,
I
know there's.
I'm addicted to them. I mean, I want as many of them as I can get now. I mean, it's just like
Well, you
the
got
coolest.
4 now, don't you?
The coolest thing.
Do you really have 4 now?
I've got 4 guitars with Trans-trems on them. Yes.
Oh, that's killer. Well, I'm yet to properly purchase and keep and hold on to my first one, which I'm definitely going to do, because for anyone that hasn't played one, even if you find one in a music store or something, play it, and it's addictive, isn't it? It
is.
It's like,
it is.
oh,
But
yeah.
it's not a lot of people really understand what it is, and it's been around since the 80s, and still a lot of guitar players and a lot of people just don't know that it exists. And it's crazy to me that that more people don't have these things or want these things. But my question to you though is, how in the heck did you learn? Well, obviously you're a seasoned musician, where I'm just an amateur kind of play down in the basement kind of guitar player.
Let me just interrupt you for 1 second to say, obviously I've been listening to your show for a little while now, and none of you play like amateurs. I can promise you that. But all the guitar playing is great.
Well,
I really love it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But picking up a Trans-trem guitar and just like you say, I borrowed it, and then you learn these. How do you learn them? Just by ear or
a bit of both. Obviously, for the songs that we did. Well, actually, now that I think about it, I don't think I did any Trans-trem stuff that wasn't on Live Without a Net. So being able to see it and see how he was doing it definitely helped a lot. But and then the rest by ear. If there was any stuff that I couldn't see, if he turned his back on the video where he then moved the Trans-trem to a different key and then relocked it, some of that was just trial and error because, you would sort of figure it out. But so I think having the video, of course, helped for those songs. But, Eddie, he was a tinkerer, wasn't he? And sort of loved whatever was on the cutting edge. And that's what people forget too. I mean, he did the stuff with the Trans-trem as soon as that came out. Then he had that Ripley guitar. I mean, he was using all sorts of things. And I think that's easy to forget too, because you have the 2 or 3 iconic Eddie Van Halen style guitars that everyone knows him for. And people have fun getting lost in the weeds in discussion groups and on YouTube about what pickup was he using this year and what pickup was then. But the truth is, as we all know, is, Eddie could pick up a Steinberger with EMGs and he'd still sound like Ed.
For sure.
At the end of the day, it sort of becomes less important to the music because whatever Ed picked up, it just always sounded like Ed.
It just sounded like him. Let me get to this real quick. We've got Boner Jams is here, and he has thrown out a little super chat for us. Said he heard that Jimmy Nibbler was here. Love you all. Sans Randy. Randy keeps signing me up for Dwarves OnlyFans, but they're actually women with hairy toe knuckles. Okay. Have a great week, boys. Thank you, Boner. Appreciate you. I don't know if you know Boner Jams or watch Under the Bus at all, but that's some crazy boys. I do
sometimes.
Yeah.
They have fun for sure.
Absolutely.
I mean, while we're still kind of on the Trans-trem a bit, I think it was your show last week or the week before. You were discussing it sort of came up like, man, why if Satch has got this gig that he's got, now. Of course, all of us don't expect Satch to all of a sudden play like and sound like Eddie Van Halen because he's Joe Satriani and he's built his own career sounding like him. So with full acknowledgement of that, but it seems like there's a couple of really fun things he could have done just to tip the hat a bit harder that would have been easy, so easy for him. And one of them to me is the Trans-trem thing for Summer Nights. I mean, to me, I could, for any of us here, if we got called to even get up and just play Summer Nights with Sammy Hagar and Michael Anthony, do you really think that any of us would in a million years think, I won't bother doing it. I'll just learn how to play it in standard tuning. Like I would never do that. I'll just bring a capo and get laughed off the stage,
I was trying to do everything that I could to bring some attention for somebody in that camp to see me play it and invite me to the show here to do it. And I would have done it. I mean, I would have been nervous as hell.
Shit your pants, but
I would have done it. And I mean, that would have been like the ultimate tribute for me, to Ed, so.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be a shit your pants moment, but you'd still say yes.
Absolutely.
And then, some people said, but it's because of his deal with Ibanez and stuff. It's like, come on. You tell me Ibanez wouldn't make him a chrome Satriani themed guitar, but with a trans-trem on it to tour playing Van Halen songs? That just seems obvious
100%.
to me.
Well, he's got a couple AVH guitars
He played
in
the
his rack
EVH
too.
guitars. He played the Music Man. So
Right.
I mean,
So-
it's not
so it
that
can't
he
be
couldn't
about
play.
that. So it's not
yeah,
about that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I had
wonder-
heard.
I'm just-
I had heard that at one point that he was presented a guitar with a trans-trem on it, and he completely hated it years ago. So maybe that has something to do
Yeah.
with it. So
Yeah.
Well, somebody like
maybe.
you,
But
Simon, when you, because I mean, you're a super accomplished musician, and I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. It's just evident. When you get your hands on a trans-trem guitar, does it inspire you to play and come up with different riffs? Because it seems like Eddie did all the good ones, and then
yeah.
you know,
yeah,
I think that's exactly right. But yeah, I remember like when I first borrowed it and I was, trying to learn the Van Halen, sort of get my head around how it works so that I didn't have to concentrate too much on stage and it became a bit more intuitive. But while I was doing that at home, I started coming up with, just by fooling around with it, all these other things that I was like, wow, that's cool. That sounds cool. And this sounds cool. And I mean, obviously maybe it wasn't for Satch, but I just don't understand how, I mean, okay, if it doesn't inspire him and he thinks, I just don't even understand how he could think that it's not a cool thing, because it's so super cool. But even if he didn't, surely you'd say, okay, I'm going to surprise everyone and I'm going to have my roadie hand me a Silver Surfer chrome Satch guitar with a trans-trem on it and play like a handful of songs in the concert with, oh man, can you imagine? That would take the house down.
oh, that would have been great.
I mean, I know if that was me, I would have my hairs would have stood up if that had happened and I was at that concert, But
Yep.
anyway, interesting. It's some interesting choices. That's for sure.
It's kind of like the guitarist in the front row, that stands like this watching the guitar player. We're in the know.
Yeah.
We're in the know.
Yeah.
And other people that aren't musicians or play guitar, they don't know the difference. But we can hear it, that song does not sound the same without a trans-trem guitar.
Even though they're playing it tuned down a whole step.
yeah.
Even with the if he had the trans-trem, it would actually give that a little bit of a redeeming factor.
I
Just
agree.
to
Randy.
have the
Yeah,
proper
totally.
the proper chord shifts from dropping that step and a half and pulling back up to it.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, that's the whole thing with Summer Nights, is that it keeps changing key based on where he locks the trans-trem. So if you're going to already do the song lower, that's even more perfect, because you're accentuating the fact that you're changing keys all the time.
Right.
So yeah, I agree with that. I mean, who knows? I can't remember about how the different level stepped notches on it work with the keys intervals exactly, but maybe there's a way he could have played it down a tone without even tuning the guitar. If you just lock the trans-trem down a tone,
I know a guy who does that from time to time.
From time to time, I'll do that.
What key is it in?
yeah,
Fuck
but-
that.
Yeah, I cheat and lock it into a different key so I can play in the E position.
Right.
Yeah. So that, I mean, who knows? Maybe it would even be playable with the trans-trem down a tone, just because of the way the trans-trem works.
Well, I've found that once you calibrate it, it doesn't really matter where you're tuning it to start with, as long as you start and tune it and adjust it and calibrate it properly. You can still have the range. I even got one of the guitars that I calibrated it with a drop D tuning as standard, and then when I shifted, it would shift in a drop tuning with each range pretty accurately too. It was pretty cool.
Okay. Yeah, it's those things are so much fun. So I don't even really know what to say about it. I just remember, I've honestly, from playing guitar since I was a kid and making a living out of it, it's easy to sort of feel like you get far away and separated from the things that made you giddy when you were 13 years old or whatever, right? But fooling around with the trans-trem reminded me of the same excitement and giddiness that I felt when I got my first electric guitar. It was like that foreign to me. I was like, wow, this thing is cool,
Yep.
So
every time I pick it up and I do like Summer Nights, I I have that same feeling of when I was a kid watching the Live Without a Net video and him playing that. And I could hear the changes in it, you know, even then. And it just brings me right back and brings all that joy right back every time. So
me too. So yeah,
John,
if anyone has a chance to go on, sorry.
I was just going to say, John, I'm sorry we kind of got off track of your
I mean, it is what it is. This is great.
68
There's nothing really more. I'm answering some questions in the chat too, and I love this. This is fantastic. Because really, what did I buy? I bought Eddie Van Halen's.
You're right, Marshall. Yeah.
You really did, and you know, I think before I bought it, I did the same thing you did, John, and I looked at the options, and I think I caught you guys just before I jumped in talking about, you know, there's the Metroplex, and there's and Friedman's got his 50-watt Plex now, which of course, as we know, is not really the same thing as the 80-100-watt 1968. He modeled that off his own personal 50-watt one. So there are other options out there, but I got to say, I mean, Suhr has just hit it out of the park. And having Jason Tong from Headfirst say, look, I've been through this thing with a fine-tooth comb, and this is a brilliant, made like a tank Plexi. You know? He
actually has a quick little video on YouTube where he's looking at, I think it's the 67, same amp. And he's like, I think the title of the version is the best Plexi you can buy today.
Sorry, who has that video?
Jason does.
Jason does. Yeah.
And I totally respect that dude. I've been, you know, following him for quite a while, and he's the Australian Dave, if not, you know, with his own thing going on. You know,
he does. He's got his own thing, and he's like any amp designer. I mean, there's only so many ways you can reconfigure the components of essentially a valve guitar amp that where you want to get distortion out of it. But each amp designer, of course, ends up tuning the things to their own taste with their own ear, don't they? And that's why a Friedman will always sound like a Friedman. Even the different models, it still has the DNA of Friedman. And Suhr, same thing. And with Jason's amps, I've had the good fortune of playing through most of them, and you know, he'll tell you himself that Alta is basically his bucket list modded Marshall kind of thing, you know, 3 channels, MIDI. It's like everything he wanted in an amp, but it doesn't sound exactly like a Friedman or something else. It's got his ear in it, you know, and he's got great ears. He's a really great guitar player, and I think that helps too. I think that amp builders that can actually play guitar makes a huge difference, because I don't know how you'd build an amp and then just have one of your mates come in to test it. That must be a strange experience. But hey, Jay, how you doing, brother?
What's up, Jay?
What's up, Jay?
Good to see you, man.
But okay, I'll have to check out that video, John. I haven't seen that one yet on Jason's channel. But yeah, we've obviously discussed it heaps.
I'll send it over to you, brother.
Okay.
But yeah, you know, so I mean, that was a big factor. Is the collective community of respected guys saying, you know, putting their money on it, and then obviously the track record of the company, Suhr, and you know, I'm obviously addicted to him. Everything I play is Suhr now. You know,
and beautiful guitars as well.
Just the sound of the thing, right? I mean, I heard the Plex, and I mean, I am still a big Dave Friedman fan, and you know, he helps me.
Me too.
Probably twice a month with some sort of routing thing or whatever it is. And I mean, he's a great resource. But yeah, I really dug into the Plex and listened to it, and I played it, and it was like, maybe it's the 50-watt thing, or maybe it's just the way he voiced it. But it was like, no, it didn't hit that, you know, that thing in me where you got goosebumps.
Yeah. Simon, how much time do you have tonight?
Well, this morning.
I've got a little bit more time. What were you thinking?
I was just going to go into some real geek out stuff here in just a few minutes. I'm
happy to. I'm actually was just firing up the studio because I've got to go over a whole bunch of Bon Jovi songs of all things for a gig that I've got on the weekend. So
okay.
But yeah, I'm more than happy to be chatting with you legends. So no problem.
Right on. So just whenever, I mean, you like, hey guys, I gotta
say,
go.
"Fuck you
Just
guys, I
let us
gotta
know. Yeah. So
Maybe let me just take a quick bathroom break now, then, and I'll be right back in a
Sure.
couple of minutes. How about
all right,
that?
cool. Yeah, yeah.
While he's
Has
doing
to
that,
poop.
I have a question for John regarding his love of the Plexi.
Yes, sir.
So you say the Plexi is that's your vibe, that's your thing.
My jam, man.
Who and why?
Who and
What-
why for the Plexi?
Yeah, was Ed the guy for you with the Plexi, or was there some? I mean, because a billion people have played Plexis.
Foundationally, the Live Without a Net tone.
Okay.
That was, to me, because when that came out, 86, I was 14, something like that. And to see and hear that and hear the harmonizer doing its thing and how huge and clean that thing sounded. It was still massive, but it wasn't a fuzzball at all. It almost had, it almost got a single coily kind of thing to it. And it was instant. And then, of course, all the page stuff and going back from there. It's like, what are the common threads? And it's that kerrang that you get out of it, that mid bark, that high end. And I mean, like I said, I'm too old to give a shit anymore because I really have no business playing this amp because I'm not that good. You know what I mean? And that's not a fishing compliment or whatever. It's just brutally fucking honest, this amp.
No, we agree with you. You're not that good.
That's right. No. I'm first to
I'm
admit
just
that.
messing with you, man.
But the sound and it does what, my hands want it to do. It makes the sounds. I just turn my pick this way and I do that. I turn the volume this way here.
And it's got what you want to hear.
Eargasm for me.
It's got it. Yeah, very cool.
Well, the reason I asked,
What's
is
up, Nelson?
What's up, dude? Glad to see you alive.
And well.
Is you're an Ed guy, but you're not on the level of Ed head that like Ryan and I are.
No.
But tone is tone. I mean,
Sure.
You can do different things with the same tone.
Well, I think
settings.
the thing is I don't have it set up like an Ed tone. So
Right.
I can still do the Pink Floyd-y things, and it's It's clean headroom with power amp gain and drive. It's David Gilmour. He's using high watts.
Yeah,
Same idea, right?
yeah, with the rat pedals and all that in front of it.
Now, with that head, John, can you do a PT 100?
What do you mean?
Can you make, is it able to do what the Pete Thorne head does and it's got the extra bells and whistles, or is it kind of an apple and oranges thing?
Apples and oranges, because it's where the gain is made in the amp, right? So your
That's the reason why
900
Pete
there
has both?
5 or 6 preamp tubes, 12 AX7s. And then it has diode clipping between that. And then the power section really is just kind of giving it the juice to
amplify
pass
itself.
through.
Yeah.
Whereas this has 3 3 12 AX7s, and the rest of it is all the power section. And this doesn't have a gain knob on it. It's just volume. So you're distorting the power section.
Yeah. And that's,
that's-
where Marshall gets its tone, is from cranking it all the way up.
But an 800, same thing. It's not this. It's definitely not this.
Yeah.
No,
And it's good. It's really good. But this is my jam for sure.
You got to get them cooking.
I'm gonna go with and agree with Blue Mox here. You deserve the best of whatever you can get.
Absolutely.
Well,
let's finish off on what we've got here. So we talked about the mid boost switch and the 3-way bright switch.
Yep.
It says that adds brilliance and sparkle to your tone with clarity and presence.
Let me just do this real quick. The big difference, I'll just show you the dramatic difference between the 4700 picofarad bright cap and the 100, or even off, right?
Okay.
So I have it set now with the 4700. Well, here, I'll do it this way. So it'll go no bright cap, 100 picofarad, and then 4700.
All right. Very cool. Very cool. I think, John, that's where I would probably set mine to the brightest.
That's me too. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. I couldn't hear a whole lot of difference between the first position and middle position.
It's subtle.
But when
we're
you went
talking
to
0
that
to 100,
third,
and then
yeah.
from 100 to 4,700.
Yeah, I could really hear it when you went to that third position
Now,
there.
if I cranked it up, like the if I opened up the post phase inverter master, you would hear a little more of a difference because, like I said, this amp's on 1.5, 2.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, right.
There's a dramatic difference between the 4,700 and the other ones.
Yeah.
And that's where I have it.
Sounds great. Sounds great dry. I can imagine when you start adding some effects into it, which will make it sound even better.
You know, while I was away, you guys were talking about how Ed's live without a net sound, and his Plexi sound in general, it almost sounds single coily. It's so clear, like the definition of all the notes. And I think that's something that you especially get from a Plexi or any kind of amp where you're kind of driving the power stage hard more than the preamp stage. Yep. There's just something harmonically, and it's so rich harmonically, but you don't need it to be crazy dirty for it to sort of sound dirty, you know? Mm-hmm. Then the other thing is, I think someone was asking you, John, why a Plexi? You know, I can think of, I'll give you my 5 reasons why a Plexi. And I would say Hendrix. I would say Angus and Malcolm Young. I would say Eddie, obviously. I would say Yngwie, because all he used to do in the 80s was use a Plexi and then run a Diode 250 preamp pedal in the front. So he was really almost doing the same thing that Ed was doing, just with a bit more gain. And for someone else, that's just one of my favorite mid-80s tones, but in a more of a, well, I guess we all know him as a session player, is Lukather, you know.
Luke, the GOAT.
All that stuff. And he was a guitarist that I loved that wasn't obviously on sort of the hero status of an Eddie or an Yngwie at the time, but to me, just one of the most accomplished all-round guitarists and songwriters. And I mean, when I was a teenager and I remember hearing the Rosanna solo on the radio for the first time, I was just like, what is that? Who's that? You know? And so I think he gets overlooked a lot. But I mean, you know, you got 5 completely different and iconic players that all played a Plexi in the late 70s, early 80s. And for me, because that music I grew up with, I mean, early AC/DC was a big influence on me. Lukather was as well, Eddie, Yngwie, and Hendrix. I don't know. That to me is like, well, they're the tones that sort of get into your DNA, you know, into your subconscious. And so for me, whenever I'm tone hunting or if I'm fooling around in the studio, I tend to, even though I'll try more preamp gain style sounds and stuff, I almost always end up, my end product, I'm like, man, it's just a Plexi and a distortion pedal in front of it again, like a Rat or something. And for years, for all my high gain stuff, like when I was doing that metal fusion stuff with Virgil Donati, I was just using a Plexi clean with a Rat pedal in the front, and it sounds great, you know.
It's
and
a fantastic clean platform, right?
Yeah, because then it becomes this beautiful, sparkly, headroomy clean. Maybe not as headroomy as, say, the clean channel on a Friedman or something, but they're so loud that, I mean, you can have it on 2 and it'll be loud enough for any gig clean and it'll still be pretty clean. And then from that point, you know, I would run distortion pedals in the front end, you know.
Yep. So I'm running
then
a
you guys-
clone. Go ahead.
Yep. Oh, I was just going to say, actually, who could explain this far better than I ever could in terms of what makes a Plexi, like, how did you guys were talking about sort of how did the amps go from Plexi to like modded things? Like, how do you get from that to a Friedman or that to a Suhr or that to a Headfirst or whatever else? And while I was up, I was just texting Jason Tong and I said, hey, man, we're talking about Plexis and modding and stuff. And he said if you wanted him to jump in for 5 minutes, he could give you a proper explanation of what the from an amp builder's point of view, what the difference really is. Because my understanding from all my chats with Jason is that all the modded amps that we know and love that are more preamp gain based are essentially a modified Plexi. It's essentially
It's a
what
circuit,
they are.
right?
So
It's like they got it right the first time, and then everything's a derivative of it. But yeah, bring Jason
the other
in
thing
for
that's
sure.
worth he might not have long, but if you guys are happy with that, that would be a really interesting. Okay, cool. I'll message him back.
I can.
Do you want me
to
just Ryan send him this?
Send him the
you
link,
can just forward him that. Yeah. And I can kick
If I
Randy
forward
and
him
Jimmy
that,
out of here.
Right.
make some room.
Yeah. But what I was going to ask you about, Simon, was the Suhr amp that you have. It's the SL68, one of the first versions. Is that your main amp?
Yeah.
Or okay. So do you find that it's I don't want to say difficult for you to play, but you really have to work at it. It's very, very open. There's nowhere to hide.
Yep.
And do you find that it's more work with that type of amp?
You know when the Haas says "yep,"
That I'm concentrating. Yeah, you're right. Oh, sorry, no, I was just trying to. I'm not a very good multitasker, and I was just trying to email Jason the link at the same time, answering the question. And so all you got was one word. No, it's definitely okay. The easiest way to answer that, in its simplest way, is it's two-part. If you're using it clean with distortion pedals in the front, like I was talking about before, I used to use it even for my big rock gigs. I'd use it clean, but with a rat pedal in the front. Then it's pretty easy to play because essentially what you're doing is it's a 1978 way of mimicking a Friedman, right?
You're adding that
you've got
compression
all this gain
in the front.
So you could think of the rat pedal as your preamp gain, right? And then you're running into a clean phase inverter and power amp kind of stage, right? So, but if you're using it the way Hendrix and Eddie did, where it's kind of dimed and you're not using any boost in the front and you're just trying to tame the thing on its own, then it's tricky. Yeah. It's definitely, and it wasn't until I bought my first Plexi in the mid-90s where I got a true, I always respected and admired Hendrix when I was a kid, but I was never like gaga about him the same way I was about people like Eddie, right? But when I bought my first Plexi and I started messing with it and I was getting some of those Strati, and I understood how hard it was to play the thing, to make it sound, all the notes ring. And that was when I got my full appreciation for what Hendrix did, you know.
Welcome in, Jason.
What's up, Jason?
He's a legend,
brother.
It's funny. These two guys that I've watched on YouTube for all of a sudden have shown up on my channel tonight. So cool. This is great. Welcome in.
It's got to be an endorsement to get a Plexi, Ryan. For sure.
Right. Yeah. But
one thing I'll say just before we cap that off with Haas, it's not stiff though. You know, like some amps, like a Wizard is stiff as hell to play. It's fighting you the whole. That's what I feel. But Plexi is not stiff, but it's a super honest amp, right? You got to know what you're doing.
It's honest. So, Jason, what precipitated this conversation? And I just happened to was watching in the background, and then they invited me on, and we're talking about that John there has just got delivery of his Suhr SL68 MkII. All right. And that's sort of and then I jumped in and started bothering these guys and
no, this is great.
But we were just discussing only a couple of minutes ago the difference. The topic came up of like what's the main architectural difference in like why is a Plexi so revered? And Jason, you and I have talked about this privately heaps of times, but and then as opposed to say the architecture of the amps that you do, which is like a modded Marshall or say Friedman does or anybody else. And I think that would be super interesting to come from the horse's mouth, you know?
Yeah, look, I have a kind of like, I often think that, and certainly the motivation for how I've gone about design is all we're looking to do. So the people like me and others that are kind of in this Marshall, you know, or modded Marshall kind of stream of consciousness, is all we're trying to do, I think most of the time, is recreate the sound and feel of a crank Plexi, but in an amp that you can run at any volume you like.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really simplifying it by saying that, but that's, you know, that's kind of the holy grail, isn't it? Because a crank Plexi does sound different than a high gain modern amp, even one that has Marshall kind of DNA. It is a different thing, and we can talk maybe a bit about why that is. But at the end of the day, if you're asking people, particularly those that, you know, probably grew up when we did, you know,
Old
through
fuckers.
Right.
right? Like, I mean, we know there's a whole generation of guitar players coming through now that have never even played a tube amp, which is, you know,
Which is just, that's an
crying
atrocity.
shame.
Yes.
You know, but we grew up listening to stuff that was recorded in the 70s and 80s, I would suggest, and maybe a little bit even before that. And those guys were all getting tones by having non-master volume amps, because that's all they had.
Yeah.
And cranking them. And that's how you got overdrive. The only way you could get it is running them up, you know, on 7, 8, 9, or 10. But now what everyone's trying to do with, you know, the kind of, you know, certainly in the boutique kind of modded Marshall style amplifier world, and you can, you know, I can rope in, you know, Diesel, Bogner, Friedman, obviously what I'm doing, there's lots of others as well, is trying to recreate those tones, you know, with some different flavors and more flexibility and so on, and effects loops and all the rest of it, but trying to do all of that and get that crank Plexi sound, but at any volume you like.
Right.
So moving all of the overdrive characteristics into the preamp only. And this is hard. It's difficult to recreate that sound and feel just in the preamp, because to get that sound and feel in the old world, it came from the power amp. And when I say power amp, it's not just the power tubes, it's the phase inverter as well.
So my question to you, Jason, and it's good to finally be on a stream with you. I know we've tagged back and forth over.
Let's just do a quick intro, just real quick. You've got John, I'm Ryan, Randy over here. We got Jimmy down below, and then Trev down below you. And obviously, you know Simon. So pleasure to meet you, and thank you for jumping on tonight.
Yeah, hey, no sweat.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, it's cool.
So my question, Jason, is regarding, I had a BE100 Deluxe, fantastic amp, right? And I did everything I could to make it sound like a Plexi. When I bought it, I thought, I'd have everything that was best of all worlds, right? And I ended up running basically the Plexi channel and tried to crank the shit out of it, right?
Yeah.
It was, and this is going, I think, a little deeper into the woods, because I think a good majority of people wouldn't really know the difference, but it didn't feel anywhere near a Plexi, and it didn't open up like a Plexi does. And I guess that's because it's all trying to be contained between preamp tubes and diode clipping and all that stuff, as opposed to hammering the piss out of the power section.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big part of it. So the thing is this kind of this whole conversation gets wrapped around a bit with effects loops as well. And you know, Dave has been, you know, he's tired of asking the question why there's no effects loop in his new place. You know?
I personally don't like an effects loop.
No.
Yeah, it's the same, and he hasn't got one for the same reason that the Suhr SL amps, even in their Mark II, updates don't have them as well. And
Do you think, Jason, that people expected his MkII to include the effects loop?
Yeah, I think some.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think some too. I think he would have got a little pushback on that.
definitely.
Well, he did, but it's impossible because the
It's impossible.
well,
Yeah.
Jason, I'm going to tell Jason how this works. So fuck, I'll
Yeah,
shut
please.
up. Sorry, brother.
Do it.
My understanding is the effects loop is inserted before the power amp and after the preamp, so you get all that clean headroom is where your effects get affected from. If you're trying to put an effects loop into a power section that's already distorting, you're doubling down. You might as well just plug it right in the front of the fucking thing. No,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you need, if you think about tube overdrive, clip. It's the overdrive that you get inside a tube amp comes from pushing the guitar signal to the point that it's starting to clip. So the amount of headroom in a preamp tube, you run out of kind of clean headroom, and it starts to clip, and that you hear that as distortion and overdrive. And this is where you might hear the term, cascaded gain stages. It just means running the output of one stage into the input of the next one, running the output of that into the input of the next one. And to get kind of, let's call it Van Halen level of overdrive, even, early VH stuff, you really need kind of 3 gain stages to get to that point. 2 gain stages is just crunch, and like etch and breakup stuff. 1 gain stage is clean. 1 gain stage is like DI almost. It's just
like super clean. Yeah.
super clean. Basically like taking your guitar and
half
plugging it
clean
straight into the console. 2 gain stages, you'll get edge or breakup. 3 gain stages, you're now in the realm of an Angus Young, EVH, this kind of level of gain. 4 gain stages, and it's modern metal. That's like 5 gain stages is just stupid, but
isn't that what a mesa boogie is?
Yeah. Well, this is it. I mean, this is I call it I often describe it as an arms race in the high gain world. It's like, no, that's 6 stages. No, 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 3 stages is what you need really to get to that level. Now in a Plexi, if you can compare a 1959 Super Lead circuit to a 2203, which was the first master volume Marshall, the 2203, the V1 tube, which has 2 gain stages in it, right? Each 12AX7 has 2 gain stages. In a 2203 master volume circuit, they actually do cascade the output of V1A into V1B. So you got 2 gain stages working one after the other in series. So,
and these are preamps we're talking about. Preamp.
In a preamp, yeah. So you're starting to get overdrive in that circuit pretty early. In a 1959 Super Lead, a Plexi, the 2 gain stages on V1 are in parallel, so they're not cascading. Which is our treble channel and our normal channel.
Right.
Okay?
They're the 2 that are in parallel together,
piece.
which is why you can jumper the channels.
Even when you jump them with a patch cable, they're still in parallel. They're not cascading.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So back to what I said before about 1 gain stage is like a DI. Well, in a Plexi after V1, your signal is still clean. There's no overdrive in it at all. Whereas in a 2203 master volume amp, at that point in the circuit after V1, you actually do have some crunch going. Now, the reason I'm explaining all of this is because it's what we get into here is that in a Plexi, you need to be overdriving the phase inverter, which is V3.
Yeah.
The third tube. You need to be overdriving the phase inverter to get that level of gain that, if we're thinking about Ed's sound. Whereas in a master volume amp like a 2203 and all the stuff that came after it, you don't. You actually don't want the phase inverter overdriving, because then it's just going to turn to mush. Back, which is, I'm basically saying what John said was exactly right. Because in a Plexi, you have to overdrive the phase inverter if you want that tone. And if you're overdriving the phase inverter, then an effects loop is pointless.
Yeah, no good.
Yeah.
So when you get to the point, because I've noticed with this one, like back in the day, I used to do the clubs and the circuits and all that stuff playing when I was younger. And it was a JCM 800 with a super overdrive pedal, and that was it. I didn't even think about it. Now, as I'm old and I have time, I think about this shit that I never thought about when I was getting paid to do it. It's hilarious. I've noticed with this particular amp, there's when you're hitting certain frequencies and stuff, and I don't know if it's the thing they call ghosting or whatever it is, but there's a certain thing that kind of happens. It's like this note is, what the hell happened here? And it's good. It's like it thickens up and it gets almost 3-dimensional.
Yeah. So this is the thing about so the new Friedman amp, Dave's new the Plex and obviously the Suhr, the SL amps that preceded that as well, have our post phase inverter master volume, right? Which is a pretty useful addition to those style of amps, because it does give it some more flexibility. When you turn that down, you are allowing the phase inverter to overdrive because it's post phase inverter. Right. So the phase inverter can get smacked with a decent signal level coming from V1 and V2, which are before it in the circuit, and that's enough to push that into overdrive and give you that gain. But when you bring that volume down, your power section is no longer having to work, like the 4 power tubes, your EL34s and that amp, and Dave's it's 2 EL34s. They're not working, which means they're not sucking any juice or current out of the power supply. So you're not getting any sag in the amp. Right. So this thing about sag happens when the power tubes, which are the things that draw the most power, when you hit that chord and you've got that amp turned up real loud, those tubes, they will just try and pull current out of your power supply, like massive amount, right? And your power transformer will try and the filter caps that are part of that will try and give it those tubes as much as they are asking for. But because of the laws of physics, they can't, like there's some delay there.
Right.
And what happens is you get a bit of what happens is that when the power supply can't give the tubes what they want in the time that they want it, you get a bit of a voltage drop.
Yeah, there's a lag, right?
Yeah, and that we hear that and feel that as sag and give.
Okay. Yeah.
In the amp. So back to the post phase inverter master volume thing is that when you turn that down, you're still getting overdrive from the phase inverter, but what you don't have is that sag and bounce that happens when the power tubes are working as hard as they can. And then you get into that thing of like, oh, well, I need a power station or a Boss TAE or whatever, right? And all of a sudden your rig's getting bigger and, you got other things to worry about. But so there's no free lunches, No.
Yeah. And Bent Tom, that is exactly right what you just said. Bent Tom just said, so like a Ferrari or other race car, there you go. The best sound is when you're almost blowing it up.
When I first brought it home and I unpacked it, I didn't check the master on the back of this thing, and it was on 10.
Yeah.
And I set it up here in my home studio, which is a tiny room. It's probably 15 by 20 maybe. And I did everything at noon. And the output transformer is so quiet. It's like, okay, it's not giving me any.
Couldn't hear any background hiss. Yeah.
This is going to kill me. And I hit an E chord, and I tell you, my fillings went fucking this way, and my vision blurred, and I got dizzy, and I just about fell over. That's how fucking loud that thing was. I'm like, holy Christ, this is awesome.
It's like the Back to the Future scene where he
Exactly.
slings across the room, right? Well, one of the things that, you know, obviously I've got the EVH amp here. And, you know, one of the things that I remember Ed saying back in the day is he was wanting to develop these amps as he went along because he was tired of fighting an amp. You know, so that's why I was asking you, Simon, about is it harder to play, you know, a cranked Marshall? And I guess a lot of that is with the preamp distortion, you're getting more of a compression, a more easy to play feel under your fingers, I guess. So
yeah, with a lot of preamp gain, what you get, you're right about the compression. You get this smoothness and sustain as well, and obviously, you don't need to play the strings or the guitar half as hard to get the same volume output of the note. So you can. That's why you can have a guitar with a super low action, with light gauge strings, and you can really, like, your left-hand fingers get a fantastic break because you can just touch those things and every note will bloom. But with a Plexi, even dimed, it's much more dynamic because, yes, when you're playing it hard and you've got your volume on your guitar on 10, you're going to get the most amount of gain that you can get out of the Plexi. But as soon as you don't pick hard or you back your volume off even one or two numbers, it cleans up so quickly that then now you've got to dig in to get that same amount of sustain or whatever, you know, articulation from the note. So yeah, it takes a little getting used to. But like we were just talking about before Jason jumped in, I mean, all our favorite players that we all grew up with, all had that fight, and like the Angus, the Malcolms, the Eddies, the Hendricks, you know, like we're talking about Lukather in the mid 80s, you know, it's so many just of our classic guitar tones and players grew up having to harness that thing. And I think that that's a really big difference, like in a lot of what the modern players today play like and sound like, as opposed to the heroes that we grew up with. You know, it's a very different thing.
What was your approach with using that amp on your Live Without a Net video that you did? Did you put it through a load box, or did you have an isolated cabinet somewhere just ripping?
What I did was I did all my practice and tracking running it through the Boss tube amp expander, and then I was using the speaker sim out of that line out straight into Pro Tools, so that way I could have the Plexi dimed and get the tone as close as I possibly could to Ed's, but with no cab shaking the walls of the house. So that's for the weeks of work that just practicing it, I did it that way. Once I'd captured what I thought was going to be about the best that I could play it without spending another 6 months on it, I also had recorded my DI signal. So I'd split my guitar before going to the Plexi and DI'd into Pro Tools on a separate track. So then once I had videoed my performance of me playing it, then I got to have some fun. I reamped it. And for that, I did run through my Marshall box with greenbacks and a 57 on it. And I still ran through the Boss tube amp expander because otherwise, my house probably, because I'm renting an old place,
blow the roof off.
It would have blown the roof off. And so I was using the tube amp expander. I was using its solid state power amp, and then bringing the volume back so that it was manageable in the house, you know. But that was super fun.
Your SL68, if memory serves me correct, you run that post-phase inverter master volume on 10.
Always.
You just have it on, which means it's basically out of circuit.
Just out of circuit, yeah.
Yep.
Out of circuit, yeah. I think what a fun little short YouTube video I might do one time, especially since I've now got that DI track of the Live Without a Net licks, is to record it with the master volume on the back out of circuit and then re-record the same precise passage from the DI track on a different track, but with the master volume back, and then volume match them. That would be fascinating to see how different, if at all, maybe the difference is negligible. You know,
if there's any tonal difference at all between the two, yeah, that'd be cool.
Because I've never, yeah.
Well,
No, sorry, go on, John.
there's a couple of things at play though. I mean, Eddie on Live Without a Net was reamped into multiple Marshalls and then into power amps and then into a stereo rig. So, I mean, what I've tried to do here is the wet, dry, wet thing. So I've got the parallelizer and a 100-watt power amp and 3 cabs and all that stuff. But I think the sheer horsepower behind Eddie's tone, especially on that one, is it's almost like sheer aggressive volume about how that it just came to life. Like, I mean, he could just sit there and hold a G note and have it sing for the rest of the night. I mean, that's kind of what he's dealing with.
Well,
but a question I have for Jason is, we're talking about hard to play and not hard to play. Like, I find this, it keeps you honest. But something like a Wizard, I don't know if you've ever played a Wizard.
I have. Yeah.
So to me, I played one of those I had it for maybe a month when I was I was playing 4 or 5 nights a week.
Yep.
And it was, to me, I would characterize it as stiff as fuck. Like, you could throw all the volume you wanted at it. You could, but it just would not do you any favors.
Right.
Do you
So is
remember
that
which
filtering
model
or what is that?
Well, do you remember which model it was? The Wizard? Is it a modern classic, an MTL, or that modern vintage thing, or something?
This would have been late 90s, early 2000s. So whatever.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Probably. Was it a single channel or a 2-channel amp?
I think it was single channel, 100-watt for sure.
Okay. Yeah. So he does have a, this is obviously Rick.
Yeah,
he
yeah.
Has
They're great sounding amps.
Oh yeah, they sound awesome. And I think he's created something unique, but it's familiar at the same time. And it's familiar because his stuff, like a lot of us, is based on that Marshall DNA. Mm-hmm. So I think he calls it vintage classic. That's right.
Okay.
Vintage classic amp is a 4-hole. It's a 4-holer, right? It's a non-master volume. So that's his kind of version of a Plexi.
Mm-hmm.
And it will be, he does like, and it must be because of the players that, we're kind of getting that amp built by him, probably, like Malcolm's of the world. And they're stiff as hell, and it is power supply filtering. So it's two things. It's the ability of the power transformer to supply current.
Mm-hmm.
So like in a power transformer, it gives a voltage out that your tubes will then run off. Often called the B+. People talk about B+ volt or plate voltage.
Yep.
That's been determined by what your power transformer is kind of giving out. You've got got your mains on one side of that, on the primary side of the transformer, and on the secondary side of the transformer is the B+ that is then your whole amp's running off.
Is that where we hear them say 480 at the plate?
Exactly.
Okay, 480 volts. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's 480 volts DC.
Mm-hmm.
You got AC coming into the amp, but the tubes actually want to run on DC voltage, and that's why you have those big fucking filter caps that you see on an old Marshall, those big blue things.
Right.
Those are like big power reservoir capacitors that their job is to smooth out the AC, because an AC waveform is like this, right? In your country, it's 60 hertz.
Yeah.
And if it's not filtered properly, you'll hear a 60 hertz buzz or hum in your audio signal. Right. So you turn your amp on and it goes, right? Normally because the filter caps are fucked.
Right.
Right.
In an old vintage. It can be other reasons, but that's one of the reasons. So, so back to the Wizard. So the power transformer, I happen to have one right here.
Oh, there we go.
Lovely.
This is a transformer of my Alta 100, actually, which is a Haber USA-made transformer.
Okay.
So this is kind of like, you can specify, right? This is a custom spec transformer made to my specs. And, on this side of the transformer is the AC, right? You plug that onto the wall.
Mm-hmm.
This side is all the shit that comes out that you then use inside your amp, including the heaters so that your tubes glow, right? The bias wind, so you can set the bias on the power tubes, and most importantly, the B plus levels. So what voltage do I want on my tubes? Right. And you can go 440, 460, 480, 510, whatever. That's a design choice. But you also design how much current can it supply. So power is a combination of voltage and current. So voltage is in volts and current is in amps. Not like amps.
Yeah. Got 6 plexis over here. It's fucking awesome.
As in amps, as in flow of electricity.
Yeah.
Right? So back to the Wizard thing. One of the reasons why Wizards are stiff is because Rick has specified his transformers to be able to push out more current than you would typically find in an average Marshall.
No sag.
So it has no sag.
There's less sag.
All right.
That makes all the sense in the world, Jason.
Yeah.
It's like I can't turn this bitch up loud enough to make it fucking play for me.
And like with that amp, with that particular amp, that that vintage classic, which I have played one of those only once, and I thought the same thing. I'm assuming it's because I think that was the kind of the amp that he did for Malcolm,
right?
And if you're Malcolm Young, that's probably what you want.
Exactly. Yeah. Big 12.
You don't want that spongy, chewy Ed sound. You want something that's just going to thump people in the chest, and it's just brutal.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, I used to fear taking a solo with that thing. I went from that to a Bogner Ecstasy, a 101B. I was like,
very different.
Doesn't sound as good, but it's easier to play.
Right.
Yeah.
So
there's other things that make an amp easy to play, but that's definitely part of it, right? Which is that designing a power supply so that no matter how loud you've got the amp, there's minimal sag. That's just a design decision, So,
and I guess that's to an extent the same with Fryat, right? He's got a huge power supply on his, because I talked to Stevie about that, and he got all fucking offended with me. He's like, "What do you mean stiff? My amps aren't stiff." And I'm like, "Come on, man."
I do like listening to when Steve, when he answers a question, he goes deep, and I love that. It's awesome. I remember he was on, I think the last time he was on Tone Talk, someone asked a question about reflected impedance through an output transformer, and Dave answered the question in 6 words, because he was just like, "I'm just going to try and move this on, because it's normal."
It's normal. It's normal, or it depends.
Yeah. Steve talked about it for like 8 minutes or something.
Right.
Freaking awesome.
So Simon was mentioning something about your amp designs. I know that I saw Michael Nielsen's video a couple months back for your new 3-channel amp design.
Leon Todd as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So Simon was saying that's kind of your take on what you wanted to hear out of an amp. Can you just kind of tell us a little bit about what that was, what the name of the amp is? Because you've got US distribution now. So
that's right. That amplifier, so that's the Alto 100, and I released it, I think the initial release is probably 18 months ago. So what Michael Nielsen had recently, his video would be the most recent one that has kind of been done by a reviewer or a YouTuber. But prior to that, the amp had been featured, so definitely on Leon's channel. Brett Kingman, who's another YouTuber.
I love Brett, man. He's awesome.
Yeah, Brett's cool. So Brett is in Melbourne, right? He's like, he's probably 40 minutes away from me here, and probably 50 or 60 minutes away from Simon. So you can literally put an amp in the back of the car and drive down there and spend half a day with him, and he would just roll the video. Yeah, Berg. So you see, like, if you watch that video, when the last one I did with him, which was the Alta, it's all one take. He just literally picked his phone up and started recording, and he goes, "Right, let's go. And I'm like, oh fuck, here we go. Okay.
Yeah.
He just starts interviewing me, and we just did it. So he literally shot that video in 10 minutes. Pretty amazing.
Wow.
So that amp, that was my first, kind of production release. So I've been kind of tinkering with the stuff for a long time, and I had built many amps, but they were kind of one-offs, or like they weren't like an official, like I'm actually going to release a product as a production amp. And when you think of it that way, you need to that would have been the first video I did with Brett. It was a while ago now. When you think about putting something out as a production or as a product, you obviously think about the tones and the features and all the rest of it, but you also think about the construction method, because you need to build something that's going to be efficient and repeatable, and it's going to sound the same every time, and so on and so forth. You get into kind of like the engineering side of it as well, and you don't want something that's, all has to be hand done, and it takes hours and hours and hours, because it's just, it compromises quality at the end of the day. And you guys have probably all heard Dave go on a lot about the merits of printed circuit board construction versus turret and all the rest of it. I'm hard in the printed circuit board camp because I'm a PCB designer, and it's part of what has enabled me to move into this industry, is because I have that skill. And it's like, well, I developed that skill. I didn't have it. I developed it. And it's important for me to be able to do that, because if you want to do, in my view, if you want to do multi-channel, anything other than a single channel amp, you really need to get into that realm, because as soon as you've got relays and other things that are enabling circuit path changes, you need to do that on a circuit board. Really, otherwise you kind of like, it's just a nightmare. So that amp, going back to the question, I guess the Alta 100 is the amp that I wanted for me. It was like, this is my amp, and this is exactly what I want in something, and that's what I decided.
Selfish.
Yeah, I decided that should be the motivation for that first one.
Well, it's kind of unique though too, because you're out there and you're a fantastic player yourself.
Oh, thanks.
So
John.
you've got some history, like you're an old fuck like us. So you've developed it over the time, and you have the wherewithal to put it together and bring it to market.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've watched as soon as, I think Dave probably introduced me to you, Jason, and I've been on you everything that comes out. I love it because you speak the language, right? Of tone.
Dave was very
nerd.
kind to, he got me onto Tone Talk, and that was a really important part of the kind of the journey, those little things like that happen. And and ever since then he's been amazingly generous, and he's introduced me to different industry contacts, and I mean, he's become a friend. Like, he's a mate, as we would say in Australia.
Very cool.
He's a good bloke, and I've got a lot of time for him. He's helped me a lot, and he's also, he's been a guy that I've been able to talk to about everything. Like, I'll ask him about like growth plans, and I'll talk to him about the merits of selling direct versus a distributor, or getting your product into a Sweetwater style scenario, or whether you the merits of different outsourcing methods, like in terms of getting your stuff built in a factory versus doing it yourself, and all those kinds of things, right? He's got a huge amount of knowledge in all those areas. That amp was just like, I just kind of like, I don't know, like, it's a little bit, Simon and I have talked about this a bunch, which is, for a musician, especially for a songwriter, there's that, I've often hear this golden rule, which is, like, create music that you love, and then you just hope that others will love it as well. If you try and create something that you don't like, but you're trying to do something, you're trying to create it that you hope that others, or that you think others will, you'll probably fail.
It's not authentic,
that was
right?
The thinking behind that amp was like, I just want to build the amp that I want,
Yeah.
and I wanted a 3-channel amp with MIDI, and then obviously the tones, because I wanted it to be alive. I wanted it to be an amp that was really suited to a live player, and that you could get what you needed out of it without having to have a multi-amp rig or a massive pedal board, or
Right.
I mean, I've literally used that amp with a MIDI foot switch, and that's it, just straight into the front of it. I don't need a pedal board when I've got that amp.
Nice.
I don't want to face 90 or whatever, but,
Right.
Yeah. but that was your idea, wasn't it, Jason? You were like, there's no reason for me, because I guess most people have pedals in the front of their amp because their amp isn't doing what they hear in their head on its own, right? And for you were like, but yes, I can build an amp that will do the things I hear in my head without needing extra auxiliary things,
Yeah, look, and I know that people, the pedal thing is there's a whole subculture around that, and I respect it, and it's a tool that can be used to to sculpt the tones that you want, and I get that, and you're right, Simon. I speak a lot to metal players these days, and
Be right back, boys.
I can see that they all they've really they've become attached to pedals because it's what you needed to do to get those sounds, those real metal sounds that you wanted out of a dual rectifier or a JCM 800 for that matter.
Because that's in the 80s. That's how all the metal players were doing it, right?
Yeah.
So they'd have a JCM 800 or something like that, and then they'd run a Tube Screamer or a Rat or whatever it is in the front, and it's become part of the culture, right? But now, with the amount of gain that people are building into an amp, and that you can do with a proper clever circuit where it keeps everything quiet and there's no interference, there's much less reason to need to run another distortion pedal in the front.
Yeah, well, I just think it's more, in my opinion anyway, it's more dynamic. You get using tube gain stages for boosting,
as opposed to what diode clipping in pedals.
Well, pedals are, pedals are cool, right? And I'm never going to say that they're not cool, but if you can, I don't think of it that way. It's just what you said, right? If you can design an amp, which I can, then I'm going to want to generate that boost with a triode and a 12AX7, not with the reason for that is because that 12AX7 is running at 250 or 300 volts, which is a huge amount of headroom. You can get a massive amount of gain and voltage swing, and then which is kind of what I would interpret as dynamics. As opposed to some transistors that are running at maybe 18 or 9 volts on a pedal board.
Gotcha.
So it's just a philosophy approach.
But it just makes sense. It's just much more dynamic than running a solid state pedal in the front,
And that's why I really like the EVH amps when they came out, because I was that way. I didn't have a bunch of pedals in front. I actually do the wet, dry, wet thing too. So I take a speaker tap signal off. So I don't have stuff in the front, that's driving an amp. So I just wanted, a 3-channel amp. I had a clean. I had my rhythm channel, and then I had the lead channel. So I'm kind of in the same camp as you, Jason, liking, like a 3-channel thing because of nothing in the front, having to boost anything.
Yeah. And channel 3 in my amp is just, you can use it as a rhythm channel for sure. That's how Jim Root uses it. So Jim Root picked up is using Altus, right? Which is another kind of big milestone in the journey of the brand, was having someone like him pick the amp up.
Right.
He's got a monster tone, man.
That's a monster. It's a heavy. It's a big tone, right? It's a big metal tone, and he's using channel 3 pretty much exclusively, other than when he needs a clean tone, he'll go to channel 1. For me, it was, it's channel 2 for rhythms and channel 3 for leads. That's the kind of, because you're in that amplifier. All channel 3 basically is a gain stage in front of channel 2. It has its own gain and volume, so you can adjust the amount of gain and the obviously
shared tone stack.
Volume of it. Yeah, shared tone stack.
Yep.
So rather than thinking, oh, channel 3 is going to be this whole different thing,
Yeah.
it's not. I was just like, no. I just want to, like, again, no pedals. So you,
Yeah.
That's
channel
one thing I
3 is-
really
channel 3 is
appreciated about
it's like your boost pedal.
Dave's amp, the 100 Deluxe, was the the Plexi channel, and then the mid channel, and then 3. It was just a continuation of
Yeah.
the same thing, and it was
Yeah.
it was great. There was no massive difference. But a question regarding Plexi is the best way to boost a Plexi for solos, because I don't use anything either, would be a clean boost, or would you? Because I'm running a Klon now. I just basically got that and plugged it into what I have, and it's okay. But would you suggest just a straight clean boost, or?
Well, you're going to get, yeah.
It depends.
I think it depends, John, where you're running the. It depends where you're running the volumes on the front in terms of how gainy it is, because obviously if you've got it set pretty gainy organically, boosting on the way in will add gain because you can't push it any harder, but it'll get more saturated, but it won't get louder.
No, I don't care about that. No, I want it all the same. I mean, I run low output pickups.
Oh, you want
just for
so
solos,
you
right?
don't-
Just to make it a little easier. I got arthritis in my hands, and I need all the help I can
Okay,
get.
so it's about getting more gain more than it's about getting more volume.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I don't need any more volume, because this is wet, dry, wet, all mic'd up into a Rodecaster that goes to YouTube. So those levels are set.
Yeah.
I don't want to be fucking with those.
Well, what I used for the Live Without a Net thing, like I was saying, was the Friedman Buxom boost, and that works really good in the front of the Plexi, actually, because it doesn't change the character of the tone too much, but it gives you more gain.
That's what I don't care for about the Klon. It kind of just
Character
changes it.
gives it character.
Changes it. Yeah. It's good, but
yeah. But I think with a Plexi that's already distorted, any kind of clean gain boost would be my first options, and then you could experiment from there. But I would try, because even though your boost pedal is set completely clean, it won't. That's not the effect it will have through the Plexi. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah.
So the
sorry, go on, John.
yeah, because I mean, I'm running pretty traditional, like all the Suhr guitars. There's 7 to 9K pickups in them.
Yeah.
Straight in, and my tone stack is on 5, basically, plus or minus.
Yeah.
The mids are cranked up, and my volume, the treble channel is 6, 7, and that's great, because then I can do everything from clean all the way up to regular good old rock and rhythm. But it runs out of gas when I'm trying to legato things.
Any clean boost where you push the front end will be great.
Perfect.
What was I telling you, John? Jimmy Ray Hawkins in there about the Greer Lightspeed.
Something about a $320.
I've got one of those. They're killer.
It's a killer pedal.
Yeah.
It is. I've got one. It's really great pedal.
Good to see you, Jimmy.
But not necessarily what you would suggest for a Plexi, right? Because it's a different beast altogether, it seems.
I don't know.
Well, it's not completely clean. That's the thing. The Greer Lightspeed will go into distortion, whereas something like a Buxom boost is just fully clean. That's the difference. But now, Jason, I know you don't have that much time. I've got a quick question for you, if that's all right. But I think you and I have discussed this before, but it's very pertinent to this whole discussion we've had, is that so when modding started, like say, people always talk about the Jose mod back in the day and stuff like that. Is that essentially modding Plexis, or was that more modding 800s, or both? Well, what was the platform?
Mostly Plexis.
Right.
Yeah. Almost all
And
exclusively
so,
Plexis.
so here's a question. I used to use, when I was doing all that sort of metal fusion stuff with Virgil, I used to use my Plexi but clean or cleanish, and then run a rat pedal into the front. Was I essentially doing then what kind of a hose, the idea, I know it's probably in a different spot in the architecture of the amp, but running a distortion pedal in the front of the Plexi is essentially what a Jose mod was? Just an extra gain circuit in the very, very front?
It's a good question, right? And there, look, there's two variations of the Jose mod. I'm trying to kind of like boil this down to the most simplest thing because people say
Simple,
Jose mod.
that's fine.
Yeah, people
Because
say
you
Jose
guys
mod.
are idiots.
Just so that it might make sense.
Yeah.
People say Jose mod, right? Jose modded Marshall. Well, fucking which one? You know,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
he did like every amp designer or modder or whatever. You're tinkering, you fucking change it, right? You don't like you don't just come up with your first mod ever and do the same one.
That's perfect. Yeah.
This doesn't work like that. But there are characteristics of what he did that you can kind of boil it down and go, okay, so this is what he did. So the most basic Jose mod, and my understanding is that the majority of them were only this, which is so drill another hole into the chassis to allow a new 12AX7, an additional 12AX7 tube to be added, another preamp tube. So all of a sudden the amp's now got 4. And that would be in front. So you would have imagine you've got your 3 that you'd have on a Marshall, where you add another one at the beginning. So a new
the very beginning, right?
At the very beginning.
Yeah.
And you then wire that, you connect that into the circuit, and now that becomes an extra gain stage in front of your Plexi. So your guitar signal would then go, rather than going to what was V1 with the parallel stages we talked about, right? The treble channel and the normal channel. Rather than going there first, it now goes to this new tube, which boosts the signal massively. And then the output of that new tube, that then goes into the old V1, where you can still blend. You still got your treble channel and your normal channel, but rather than that seeing just your guitar signal, it's now seeing the output of the new tube. So we're getting a lot more gain. We're cascading gain stages now, and so
it's almost like that. It's almost like that mod that I've seen. You plug into one tube socket, and it's called the hot shot or something like that. Yeah,
hot mod. Yeah. But it's tonally different because it's right at the beginning. So where you do this in the circuit, you'll get different.
Different results.
Gotcha.
Well, it's a bit like take an overdrive pedal, put it in the front of the amp, take the same overdrive pedal and put it in the effects loop. Does it sound the same?
No,
not at all.
But so essentially then in its most simplest, like breaking it down to caveman understanding that I need, that original simple Jose mod is an extra valve right at the front of a Plexi. So in other words, almost like it's running a distortion pedal in the front of a Plexi. Or is it still that's not what it is.
Well,
but it's clean. So it's like me using my Friedman Buxom boost, which is no distortion characteristics in it at all, and pushing the front of the Plexi with that.
Yep.
Is that in essence? I know it's not exactly the same, but in essence.
Like, again, it goes back to what I said before about, tube gain stages are more dynamic than pedal gain stages. And in other words, you can generate more. I mean, it's just, you get more voltage output, like it's more.
Okay.
Yeah. They just,
Jason, I
got one
gotta
other
say, I just say this before because I know you got to go pretty quick. Jason, this is heaven to me and to all of us here. Just talking, hearing your knowledge and sharing it with us is appreciate it so much. And you too,
Absolutely.
Hoss, but you're a mate, Jason. It's an absolute pleasure.
Oh man, it's no sweat. I'm going to talk about this shit all day. And now there's a
Jason,
second one.
I got a wait, before you get to that, before you get to that really quickly. So any gain stage added in an amp is of itself clean volume. It doesn't have its own distortion in it. Is that correct? It's the way it pushes the next stage, or is that sort of not exactly right?
You can configure so that this, like, as I said, like before, like in a 12AX7, there's 2 gain stages. So you'll often, when you if you get into studying this stuff or you hear people talk about it, you'll often hear people say, V1 means valve 1 or tube 1, V1A, V1B.
There's the two sides.
V2A,
Yeah.
V2B. So, and as a designer, you can configure that each of those gain stages to have different characteristics, different
see.
frequency response. So, in other words,
Right.
you can set it up so it's got low pass or high pass filtering. How much gain does it actually generate? And, so is it boosting, is it kind of like, is it boosting more at 2K than it is at 400 hertz and this kind of stuff? You can actually design that in.
I didn't know that. That's fascinating. Yeah.
So it's not necessarily linear. In other words, it'll be the amplification factor can change by frequency.
Gotcha.
And that's a huge, and we hear that as tone, like, oh yeah, it's got nice mids.
Yeah.
Right. And you can do that on any stage in the amp, not just this first one or whatever, any, like all of it. Did that answer the question? I can't remember. Then you've got,
you totally did. Yeah.
Jose, just to finish that Jose answer, the other thing that he did, which was pretty like it's genius level, I think, because to my knowledge, he was the first one to do this, which is putting diodes in an amp. Right. Someone might say, "Oh no, it was done by such and such before." Maybe it was, but to my knowledge, Jose was the first one to do this. So, diode clipping in an amp, and this is where the Jose mod does get. That term is used a lot to refer to putting diodes in, and where in actual fact, and I'm quoting Dave here because he's way much more an authority on this topic than I am. 90% of the amps that Jose modded did not have diodes in them. Right. They were just that extra gain stage, maybe a few
extra
other
bits. Right. Yeah,
that's it. But in fast forward to today, when a lot of guitarists or even amp designers say Jose mod, more often than not, they're referring to putting diodes in. And with what he did with the diodes thing was to use a thing called a Zener diode. It's a special kind of diode, and it works like a compressor. So if you think about, or a limiter, in fact, probably a better way to describe it. It works like a limiter. So you can imagine in your studio, right, whether you're using an actual outboard gear or a plug-in or whatever, if you put a limiter on a signal, it'll prevent it from picking up.
It's like a brick wall, right?
It effectively squashes the audio signal. So we've all looked at an audio signal in our DAW or whatever, right? And you can see it's like this, like goes like this, whatever. Well, electrically, it's the same. If you put an oscilloscope into an amplifier and have a look at the waveform that's actually sitting on a wire, like literally in the amp, and you put it on the oscilloscope, which graphs it, and you have like voltage on this axis and time on this axis, and you have a waveform that looks like this. It's exactly the same. It just hasn't gone to a speaker yet, so you can't hear it. But what you see in terms of the voltage changes in the amp is exactly what's going to hit the speaker eventually, and then you'll actually hear it. So what he did was to put these Zener diodes work like a limiter. And he found this way of kind of putting these tiny little, 50-cent parts or whatever, not expensive, in a certain part of the circuit that would compress. So you got your guitar signal and it would compress it. And what it simulated was overdrive. Because what happens in a tube gain stage, back to the, how gain stages work, when you cascade the output of one gain stage into another, you get to the point where the tube runs out of headroom. So it can't amplify it anymore. Like it's got no more headroom left. And when you run out of headroom, guess what happens, right? The signal then squares off. Distorting. So what the Zener diodes do is give you that sound and feel of a triode going into overdrive, but at a lower volume level. So he was able to come up with this mod that made Plexis sound like a Plexi on 10, but you could have it at any volume, turn it down, and it's still there. So it's really clever.
Cool.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's probably what spawned the JCM 900.
Yeah, to a degree, there's a whole lot of stuff that kind of came after that, like, and even, Marshall started exactly right. Marshall started doing this in, the 2205 actually, which is before the 900, which is right at the end of the JCM 800 series.
Was that still called so it's still an 800, right?
Mm-hmm. Completely different circuit than the 800 that we know and love.
So a quick observation. Trev down here in the bottom says symmetry. The bearded bastard. He has a 900.
Yeah, hi, Trev.
and he's brought it over to my house, and I'm on acreage, so he put it outside, cranked the bastard up, and that amp plays itself.
Yeah.
Is that because of the diode clipping and all that stuff?
Yeah, and it's got a transistor front end.
There you go. Yeah,
it's not just diodes, but it's got elements of a distortion pedal inside the amp.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I haven't traced that thing out, bit by bit, but I understand that there are elements of the governor pedal.
That would make sense.
Right.
Yep.
in the front end of that amp.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is, again, like, okay, if someone's putting just a distortion pedal in front of an 800, so, some product owner or engineer at Marshall will, well, why don't we just put them in the, put them together and put them inside the head? We'll call it
Do
the
you
900.
have the Super OD or do you have the 808? Which one? I guess Yngwie went the 808 route with his.
That's right. Well, that's another example of
Yeah.
that. But that whole kind of like putting xenodiodes into an amplifier to give that sound, a lot of that, that kind of the guitar players of the late 80s, so, the Steve Vais of the world. So Steve Vais, Jose Modded Marshall, is the diode clipping one.
Right.
It's not.
And it has its own sound. Pete Thorne did a thing on that, right? And then
This is Pete. So, you compare that to the Richard Fortus Mick Mars amp.
Yeah.
That didn't have it. So it's a bit
That
more
sounded
of
much
a
better
hard
to
rock,
me.
open, less compressed amplifier. And Vi's one is more overdriven. And it's those, when you put diodes in an amp, you get more distortion, more compression, but it does change the sound. It's more of a scooped sound. Kind of hollows the mids out a bit, and you get a bit more sizzle on top and a bit more thump in the bottom end as well. And then fast forward to the modern day, truckloads of high gain amps that have that in them.
Yeah.
And is that how Dave gets the Jerry, the JBE kind of thing? Is that a diode clipping?
Like the set switch is a version of that.
Right.
So, and you get a volume drop when you engage that, and that's just because, like you said, it's kind of just squashing things.
So what you're experiencing there is that you're squashing the size of the signal, which you hear as a drop in volume.
Yeah.
Right.
That was when I had my BE. I flicked that switch once. I'm like, ooh.
Well,
no more.
Well, Jason was put a diode clipping switch in my original old Plexi, which is still at his place. And I remember he said, "You're going to love this. Check this out." And I remember hitting the switch, and I got all that kind of early Paul Gilbert gain, but the volume dropped, and I was like, I think something's wrong. The volume dropped. And he goes, no, that's just how it works. And I was like, because I didn't understand. And I just looked at him and I said, well, I don't want that. Why do I want the volume? He goes, what is that?
I may have even emailed Dave after I turned that switch on. And I said, there's something wrong with that switch. It sounds like shit in the volume.
This is why I in the
What's up, 6?
in the Alta that I designed, because it's got a clipping option.
Yeah.
It's got that switch in it, you know.
Yeah.
It's got 2 master volumes on the amp, and the reason for that is that if you can, because it's MIDI, you can actually put those into presets. If you want to activate that sound with the diode clipping in, then at the same time you can activate
your second master volume and account for it.
You can normalize the volumes.
Nice.
That's brilliant. Love that. Brilliant.
You know, that's half the thing, though. Anytime you're playing something and the volume drops, it automatically sounds like shit. Doesn't matter if it's the same tone.
That's right.
You know, it's our perception of it.
Yeah.
That's why it's critical when you A/B anything that you've got the volume level exactly matched, because you will definitely hear volume as a perceived improvement. You know,
That's why you turn everything on 10, Simon.
that's why everything on 10 and it's safe. Yeah.
There you go.
So, Jason, Simon, I know that over in Australia, you guys are just getting your day started, right?
We are, yeah, and I'm supposed to be going through a truckload of Bon Jovi songs, like,
Yeah.
But it's and I know Jason's got a split too, but it's been an absolute pleasure, you guys inviting me on impromptu, and
Really appreciate you both coming on. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, for sure.
Open
And
invitation.
this obviously
Anytime.
is, you know, Tuesday nights for us are now kind of our geek out, you know, gear talk and whatnot. So
less playing, but Jason, these guys do, and I've got to talk to you at some point, Ryan, how you figured out how to do this. But these guys all have a night where they jam all together, and the quality of the audio live on YouTube, even though they're all in different cities, it's unbelievable. I don't understand how you do it. But anyway,
let me give you just a quick taste of the guitar tone, how it comes through, if that's.
And these guys are all great players, Jason. They're great.
Oh, look at this.
That's
brilliant.
So that's kind of a taste of my tone there.
Yeah.
So what I want to get him to do is try one of these through that live without a net rack. See what that sounds like.
Yeah. I'm actually running pretty close to what Ed would have run. Two SD 3000s. I couldn't find a H3000. I don't know that I would be confident in it, but I got the Eclipse back there in the rack.
It'll be close enough for sure. Yeah. That's awesome, Ryan. And Jason, you got to check these guys out all jamming one time. It's so much fun. Yeah, it's great.
I'd be definitely keen to know how you're also doing it, other than if you
Roadcaster
just doing
Pro
it
2
through StreamYard.
That's it. Roadcaster Pro 2. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, right.
Well, there's a little more.
There's a few other tricks.
There's a little more that you need to know.
I'll bust your balls about that, Ryan, some other time, because I'd be curious myself. But I mean, Jason's a great guitarist too. If any of you haven't heard Jason play,
He's fantastic.
Actually, the two of us play
Great
together
player.
on his Alta 100 video on his YouTube channel. So check that out. And me and Jason
Link's been
playing
in the chat.
together, and
Very cool.
lots of fun.
Hey, thanks
Thanks
guys.
everybody.
Thanks for jumping on. We really
So
enjoyed
cool,
it.
man. That was an
It's a
honor,
treat.
guys. Appreciate it.
Absolute
real
pleasure.
pleasure.
Happy to, great. Yeah. See you guys on the next show for sure.
Fuck off.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you, Jason. Thank you, Simon.
Have a great
really
night.
appreciate it. You too.
Have a fantastic night. Cheers.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
What a pleasant surprise that was.
All right.
All right.
Well, that turned into a good time, didn't it?
It did.
Sure did.
Hell yeah. I love the nerdy stuff.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Jimmy and Randy just over there soaking it all in.
Right.
I would love to be able to try one of those amps and it doesn't take me long. All I got to do is just unplug the speaker cable, put the amp down, plug the speaker cable back in, because everything else, as far as my effects and everything, are just a speaker tap off. So I would love to throw that SL68 Mark II in that mix and see.
Righteous and all those guys, they have that stuff, don't they?
Yeah, but you're talking $5,000 to go pick one up.
Just do a quick little deposit like you do with some guitars. Bring it home, plug it in. So, okay, well, here's 3 of these. Take this one.
And I would really like to try the that, what do you call it? The Alta?
Alto 100.
Alto 100, yeah. And I'd really like to try one of those. I don't know where I would find one. You know, if it something you could go into a store and find it, or just get it from a U.S. distributor. But I would certainly like to be able to check one out, because they sound fantastic from what I've heard on the YouTube stuff that I've seen. But
and his design of that Alta is kind of up my alley. Had a clean channel, a dirt, and then more dirt. Because I'm of that same. I don't like a bunch of pedals in front of the amp.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's why I've always liked this amp here. You know, it can go
Right.
clean. You know. And then just swap right over to channel 2. And then channel 3 for a lead. Channel 3 is just insane on that end.
Yeah, I was gonna say, wow. I thought 2 was I thought you can't get much more than 2, and then sure enough, here comes 3.
And it's different with the stealth model. The original model there, channel 2 was a little more just of a crunch kind of thing. There's a lot more gain on channel 2 with the stealth model.
Yep.
But that one's turned out to be my favorite from the original, the EL34 and the 6L6 one.
Yeah, Pete, Sound the Sirens, he's got one of those Alta amps, man. He loves that thing.
Very cool. Very cool. It's a killer amp, no pedals or boost needed. I hate amps that need pedals in front. That's my thought too. Like the gain to be on tap in the unit already. Alta is the real deal.
That's
Very
awesome,
cool.
man.
Very cool. So we were all kind of deep into that conversation. So there's a few people that came in. We've missed you.
Sorry to the chat for not paying full attention.
So I want to say hey to you, Arky.
Hey, Archie.
55 in there. It's like, holy crap.
Yeah.
57.
Pretty good.
Anybody that we missed, we apologize. And the questions and so
57.
forth.
It's going up. Somebody must have.
That's
59.
Up to 60.
59, do I have 60?
Well, John, can we hear that amp? We never did get to finish, what we were looking at.
No, that's fine.
We were on the 3-way bright switch. I think we were just about done. You've already explained what that did. Just adds the sparkle and brilliance.
And Jason just backed up my rambling with technical explanations.
Right.
I'm not going to say anything that he hasn't already covered.
And the new master volume control, which is on the back.
Yep. That's it right there.
Just adjust it to your liking. All right. We didn't talk about the Variac low power mode.
Yes.
So they've got that there. You've got a high, off, and a low. So off would be just off of the amp. That's just off. Okay.
Yeah.
So you can go to high or you can go to low.
Yep.
And let's see what it says there. 3-position power switch incorporates a low power Variac mode, which lowers the amount of voltage available to the amp. Classic mod makes the amp feel much more spongy with a smoother attack and the foundation for some of the greatest rock tones of all time. To avoid having to rebias the amp, the SL amplifiers have 2 internal bias adjustments, one for high power, the other for low. It doesn't say what it lowers the volume to, though.
A volume? It's negligible.
I mean the voltage. The voltage, yeah.
I heard Pete in one of his videos say that it brings it down to about 70. Yeah, 70.
Interesting.
70 watts.
So as he was showing us that transformer that was his,
Yeah.
the Suhr has a custom Plexi output transformer.
Right. It's probably a Habor, I would think.
which again is the bridge between the output section and your speaker.
Yeah.
So very cool, John. Specifications right there. US price is $34.49. 100 watts, 3 12AX7s, 4 EL34s. We talked about all the switches there, master volume, all that. 47 pounds.
It's fucking heavy. And
the dimensions there.
The power output transformer. So you pick it up and it's like this.
It's heavy on one end. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. So very cool.
89 volts. Is that what Tommy's saying?
Let's see.
I'm not sure.
He's asking the question as well.
Oh.
89 volts was the sweet spot for the EVH.
For the EVH stuff.
Yeah.
So who knows?
I think if you want to just look up a video on it and somebody will tell you. Pete,
yeah,
he's good at it.
Well, very cool. Congratulations on the amp. Can we hear the amp with some of the goop and delays and all that? Do you have that?
It's not dialed in yet, so it won't sound necessarily as good as it can.
Yeah, just kind of give us an idea. Yes, Quentin, off is a setting that you should use more often.
Sick bird.
That's the EVH and harmonizer on. Yeah. That's it.
Very cool. Once you get that dialed in, that's going to sound fantastic. Right on.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. Congrats.
Easiest amp to ever, to dial in. Turn everything on 5, bring the bass down, and put the mids up.
Just
off
go.
you go. Yeah.
Very cool.
And that's Variact.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So that's why you get that you know, that chewiness, right?
Yeah. Very nice.
Yeah. Perfect. I love it.
So, what should we talk about next Tuesday? I guess when the show ends, anybody that has some suggestions, come in and leave a comment on tonight's video of what piece of gear you might want to see for next week. Whether it be, one of my Steinberg guitars, one of Randy's Charvels, Trev's Explorer, or his Marshall back there, John Suhr's,
Exactly,
Jimmy.
Tommy. That's it.
Jimmy
right
may
there.
be here, so anything that maybe Jimmy's got, we can talk
Show
about.
us his third ball. Give us a tour. How that all fits in.
It's quite spacious.
It goes on a different channel.
Is that a glider? No, it's my third testicle.
I put it in my neck for safekeeping.
So we went a little long tonight, but that's okay. We had some really, really good information.
worth it.
Simon
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
and Jason, awesome guests. A lot of good information. So we're going to wrap it up. I'm going to play out a little bit, I guess, unless John wants to with the Suhr there.
I can, but we can't do any. No, go ahead.
I was just going to hit this track and go. So Trev will kind of end the show as we go. And we're going to say thank you again to all of our channel members and all that good stuff. Thank you.
Eddie Van Halen here, telling you, keep playing, man. Gotta keep playing. It's the only thing there is. Music, man. Keep playing. All right? I'm gonna come looking for you if you don't.